a conductive wire, and you were so electric. I had no say when you came so near, and just passed right through me.
Hey everyone, welcome to Geekdom is Back. Today we're doing a roundtable episode on Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker, closing out the trilogy here, and with me today I have Tim Matthews, Mirjani Rawls, and Jonathan Lally. We are going to dive into this, and I think for the most part, we all kind of feel the same way about this movie. But before we really dive in, the first thing I want to know is, did you guys rewatch The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi before going into this, or were you just like, nah, I'm good, gonna go see it and see how I feel about it?
So for me, I did rewatch both of them. I did an entire Skywalker saga rewatch, including Rogue One. Part of that was because I just like to do those things. I definitely probably didn't need to watch the Force Awakens or The Last Jedi before this, but even when I'm not leading up to a movie, I like to just kind of come up with a reason to do some type of curated marathon of movies. But also I've been showing it. I've been showing the movies to my sister for the first time, so going through them has been a large part of her being able to see them, since she's only seen Empire. We did kind of a bit of like the machete thing. We did Rogue One, New Hope, Empire, Phantom, Clones, Jedi, and then Force Awakens, Last Jedi, and Skywalker. I will say, everyone that I've read on the internet who has said don't ever show Star Wars to someone for the first time, in the funky order. And I was like, no, it'll be fine. My sister has thoroughly enjoyed watching them, but there was a point, I don't remember during what movie, but she was like, so why are we watching them this order? And she had like all these questions, and I was like, crap, they were right. So maybe either show it in order of release or chronological the first time, but we worked it out, and it's fine, but lesson learned.
Nice. Mirjani, how about you?
I did. I didn't watch the original trilogy because I've watched it so many times that I pretty much know the beats by heart. And the prequels, like, I didn't particularly want to watch Phantom Menace again. You know what I mean? Like, I pretty much know what was going on there, and I didn't want to watch another movie about trade agreements. I watched The Force Awakens, and especially The Last Jedi. I think I watched The Last Jedi twice.
Okay.
Force Awakens, I saw it twice in theaters with friends. The Last Jedi, I kind of wanted to really take notes and kind of get the beats of what Rian Johnson was going for, because I had a feeling what The Rise of Skywalker was going to do, especially with bringing JJ back. So, yeah, that's what I did.
Jonathan, I know you and I texted a little about whether or not to rewatch the movies beforehand. So did you end up doing so?
I didn't, but it wasn't like any particular reason. Like I find that like recaps are really good for TV shows. For me, because TV shows are spread out across so many episodes that I tend to forget so many things, but movies are so compacted that I didn't really feel the need to do it. But the last time when we went and saw The Last Jedi at the Draft House, we took part in the 7-movie marathon leading up to it. And that was a fun thing to do at the Draft House. But the funny thing is we actually skipped all the prequels. So it started with the prequels. We actually skipped it and got there in the morning when they opened up again for the original trilogy, and the theater just stunk because all these people had been like sleeping there. But got the big blanket with all like the movies listed on it and stuff like that. And I just remember thinking like, I never need to do this again, ever again. And I didn't even do the whole thing. So yeah, like I kind of, I'll watch a movie again a few times after I've seen it. Like I still watch Marvel movies. And now that I have Disney Plus, I find that I'm revisiting things that like I maybe watched a bunch after they came out and then stopped. So I can't say that will always be the case. I just didn't feel like it necessary this time around, just based on like, the last film was still pretty fresh in my brain. And I know and follow it. I also follow like enough podcasts and YouTube channels that like I get enough Star Wars injected into like the trailer breakdowns and stuff that I watch and predictions that, you know, like shout out to New Rock Stars. They give me enough Star Wars stuff in their videos that I just didn't feel like the need to go watch it this time around. But I still think Force Awakens is a fantastic film. I think Last Jedi's got its moments. Just in this particular case, didn't really feel necessary to watch them again.
Yeah, I definitely debated rewatching them, but I had rewatched the original trilogy before The Force Awakens came out just because it had been so long since I had seen them. I honestly didn't remember a whole lot about them because growing up I wasn't super into Star Wars. It's a much more recent thing for me, but I saw that the James Bond movies were on Amazon and I had saved a ton of them, and I think they're leaving at the end of the month. So I was like, all right, I'll watch those instead, and therefore did not rewatch The Force Awakens or The Last Jedi. And like you said, they're still pretty fresh because people have been talking about Star Wars so much more again since The Force Awakens released. So I was like, all right, I remember enough of these to where I don't need to watch them again. But that leads me to the next question that I have for all of you, which is, what were your expectations for The Rise of Skywalker going into it, and how did you end up feeling walking out of the theater for the first time?
Well, first off, I fully support your decision to watch the James Bond movies as I sit here drinking my Scottish breakfast tea out of my Sean Connery mug.
Perfect.
You know, channeling all the Baby Yoda tea sipping that I can have. But so my expectations going into it, as much as, you know, I avoided spoilers and everything, I had a pretty level-headed and nervous expectations going in, because as much as you can avoid spoilers, it's kind of hard to tune out the noise of mixed reactions. After it was over, first reaction is move over Baby Yoda, all hail Babu Frick. And just that the visuals were excellent. John Williams continues to be the most consistently fantastic thing about Star Wars. And it was just kind of like, it was fun. I'm not really sure what the movie was trying to say, and it was kind of weird. And it was definitely a more subdued reaction than really all of my friends. We kind of all felt it when we walked out of the theater. All of us were starting out trying to be like, oh, it was really good. It was really good. And then it kind of fell into, but what was up with this part and this part? And it was kind of a bummer to walk out of it. And thinking about it since then, I've come around on some things and some things not, but I'm also trying to be open with, I might feel differently when I watch it again, because I felt very confused and conflicted when I saw The Last Jedi as well. That also had something to do with the fact that I drove, every time I've seen these movies, I've seen them with my friend Bobby, and I had to go up to Connecticut to see The Last Jedi, and there was a blizzard, so it took me 10 hours. I chugged a beer, we went to the movie, and I fell asleep in the first 20 minutes. And I woke up and I was like, I don't know what's going on, but this throne room looks pretty sweet. And so I didn't really understand the movie, but I've come around a lot on The Last Jedi. Not everything, but so I'm kind of hoping I feel similarly in time to Rise of Skywalker. But for now, weird.
I felt very disjointed. And it really comes because you got to think with these trilogies, it kind of tailors to different generations.
Uh-huh.
So an older generation will look at the original trilogy with A New Hope to The Return of the Jedi in different eyes that I would, who started out. I guess if I had new eyes to it, I started out with Phantom Menace, and then I remember going to go see the third movie at a midnight screening. Just kind of like, I tried to stay away from TV spots and stuff as much as I could, but knowing what was kind of going on behind the scenes, with Colin Trevorrow kind of dropping out of what would be The Rise of Skywalker, and JJ coming in, and him doing the first movie, and then people not really responding to The Last Jedi as well. I was really afraid that he was going to recon it. And in my opinion, some of my fears were realized, because I think that while The Last Jedi, I mean, there were some things that it did that I didn't necessarily agree with, but it did push it forward. I think that while I enjoyed The Force Awakens, it played it very safe. And that's kind of what The Rise of Skywalker did. When I left the theater, it was weird because it didn't feel like a finality to me. Like, it was like my theater, because I went to go see it at 6:15 kind of after work, after they opened up another theater. And we all just kind of sat there and didn't say anything. Like, normally, like, when I went to go see Endgame, when I went to go see, like, Force Awakens, I remember, like, people applauding. Like, like, hey, you know what I mean? Like, that was awesome. Everybody just kind of, like, sat there for a little bit to try to take everything in, because it seemed like it was about 3 different movies into one movie, and also kind of apologizing for Last Jedi. So, I mean, now, like, I'm not completely negative on The Rise of Skywalker. There's some things that I definitely did like on it, but as a whole, I'm not thoroughly happy with it. And I mean, with fandom, and especially with Star Wars fandom, if you're not happy with something, then you're wrong. But I think that it's cool that everybody has different opinions and they can talk about it in kind of in a civil way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I agree.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mirjani, as usual, hits it on the head for me. I walked out of that theater kind of just like, what the fuck? What was that? And I just remember being like so much of what you just said resonated with me, because I remember ultimately like warming up on it. Like, Last Jedi was an interesting one for me. Like, ultimately, yeah, it wasn't my favorite, and I definitely felt like Force Awakens hammered on the nostalgia, and that was what people needed, like a rehashing of the story, but giving us new characters to do it with. And then The Last Jedi, like, ultimately what I realized is that they were trying to, build upon what comes after the Skywalkers. And then, unfortunately, you have like that toxic fandom that like thinks that everything that Star Wars needs to be connected. And so this film was ultimately, like, as Mirjani pointed out, kind of like a retconning of it almost. For certain things to be spelled out so explicitly in The Last Jedi, and then to be very much ceremoniously erased in this film, or I should say unceremoniously, really, just kind of written off with a piece of dialogue or whatever. It was just so weird. I definitely had moments that I loved and I felt like were peak Star Wars. But then so much of it felt like, and I knew going into it that it was going to be slightly disjointed just because of like all of the behind the scenes drama with getting rid of Trevorrow and then bringing in JJ. Like, I remember ultimately thinking, before Last Jedi thinking, oh, it'd be really cool if Rian Johnson did both of them, because I had only really seen Looper and Brick, and ultimately like wasn't crazy about what he gave us, but I did like the ideas that he presented. And then, JJ kind of came in and just decided that he was going to appease the worst and most vocal part of the internet. and it looked good in the process, but yeah, there was just so much stuff that, we can dive into, and we will. But like I said, I feel like I remember walking out of Last Jedi thinking, I really appreciate Force Awakens more now. And then I walked out of this one thinking, I really appreciate Last Jedi more because of like what Ryan was trying to do, and, how it was so kind of thrown to the side here. That's kind of how I feel. A lot of feelings.
Totally understandable. And
and sorry, just to cut in one more thing. I will say that like I ultimately left thinking that if JJ cares as much as he seems to like have led on with the choices that he made with this film and the undoing of certain things, like he really should have just committed to the entire trilogy. I don't remember the exact details, but one has to think if you're going to J.J. Abrams with Star Wars, they probably offered him the entire trilogy at the beginning. And then when that didn't happen, Because I still feel like Colin Trevorrow was still fairly, yeah, he had that Jurassic World movie, but I still don't think he was like quite ready. I would have liked to see him do one or two more like kind of blockbuster films, maybe even like original content. J.J. Abrams was kind of like the safe but proven choice, and he didn't commit to all three. It would have been really nice to see what an entire trilogy from J.J. may have looked like. But if it still arrived at the same conclusions, I'm not sure it would have been the best decision either.
It really felt like he smashed two movies into one with this one, and because he had kicked off the new trilogy so well, and then I enjoyed what happened in The Last Jedi, I had pretty high hopes going into this until I saw all the critics' feedback coming in on Twitter, and I was like, okay, I'm not going to read any of the reviews because I do want to, formulate these thoughts for myself. And when I left the theater, I was kind of just like, oh, they did that to Rey? It was just fine. It wasn't what I wanted for the character by any means, because I think what The Last Jedi set up was something that would lead to a much more exciting future for Star Wars, but it really just fell flat in a lot of areas. So it's like the highs were high and the lows were really low, so it kind of put it somewhere in the middle for me. And this is one I'll probably rewatch again once it's out on digital or Blu-ray or whatever on Disney Plus, and maybe then I'll go back and watch the whole trilogy, because I had seen The Force Awakens twice and The Last Jedi just the one time when I went to see it in theaters. So for me, it'll be nice to sort of get this picture as a whole and see if maybe then it fits in a little better instead of trying to make it fit in with my expectations of where I wanted things to go. But I do agree with you, Jonathan. It would be interesting to see what would have happened if one person directed the entire trilogy, or even if, just Rian Johnson came back for this one instead.
Definitely. Like, that's the thing. It's like this movie, and I think as much as different people are reacting to this movie in their own ways. I mean, a number of my friends, they were like, I had a ton of fun. They're like, I loved it. They're like, did I, like all the decisions? No, but they're like, I had a good time. Me, I've been like a bit more critical, and so sometimes I'm like, am I being too critical? But I think, as mentioned, the idea that everyone kind of wants their own individual thing out of these movies, and if some people are happy with how this one came out, and some people are happy with how The Last Jedi came out, or vice versa, I mean, that's great, and as long as people can have a good conversation and not a toxic conversation about it, all the more for it. You had mentioned, Deanna, that you didn't want, that plot point out of Rey. And so I think back to like how people reacted to The Last Jedi, where they're like, oh, I didn't want that for Luke. We don't have ownership over these movies, but it's one thing for people to all these years been like, oh, this is what I wanted and I didn't get that, versus The Last Jedi setting a very specific plot point and JJ just being like, no, we're going to do a different one. Like, it's,
Yeah.
To me, it's like, it's different than someone just being like, oh, I didn't want, Rey to be a Palpatine. It's that it doesn't make sense. Like, there's no through line. And I think that's the biggest issue with these movies is maybe it should have been JJ for all three. Maybe it should have been Rian Johnson for the last two of them. Or maybe when Disney set out to make these movies and they absolutely know that they're going to make a trilogy, maybe have a plan. Maybe have the same writers write the overarching plot line.
And I thought that was kind of the point of the story group that they have, is to keep things in line. And I was like, this felt very off from that. But I do want to dive into some more specifics a little more here. So I'm going to combine the next two questions because they're related. But what do you guys think were the best and worst character arcs in this movie in particular?
So the best story arc in the movie, for me, I think I got to go with Kylo. I think throughout the entire trilogy, I think he's had the most consistent arc from movie to movie.
Okay.
I even think, his turning good, like, I loved that whole part of the arc, and I didn't need much more from that part of the arc because he has done such horrible things that it's not like he can live and, go back into life and be accepted by everybody. I think he just needed to be redeemed enough in the same way, Vader was, that the balance was brought, he was turned around, and he redeemed himself enough for the person that mattered, but we didn't need anything beyond that. And I thought they handled that really, really well. I really want to say that Rey had the best arc, but the fact that she becomes a Palpatine really hinders that for me. Poe had a great arc, but I would have liked more from it. The choppy pacing really affected me from being able to really dive into it. But I think he has potentially one of the coolest arcs. But worst arc, I think I gotta go with Finn, because I don't think he had a real arc in any of the movies. I think, he starts out, he's a stormtrooper who turns good. I think that's a really interesting thing. Last Jedi, as much as I have come to really love that movie, his part of it, it really feels like they just don't know what to do with his character. And then in this one, he just shouts Rey all the time. Like, I'm not sure he had much more dialogue except shouting Rey, or when they're going to die in, or they think they're going to die in, Star Wars quicksand. He's like, wait, Rey, I forgot to tell you this thing. And all of us think, oh, well, he's probably, says that, probably thinking that he loves her, wants to say he loves her because he's just shouting Rey all the time.
See, I never thought that. I feel like I'm the only one, but
really,
he kept getting these feelings that you would see Leia have throughout, The Force Awakens. And I was like, oh, okay, he's Force sensitive. And I just like moved on with it. And I was like, I see why everyone else thought it was going to be something else. But I was like, I don't know if they're going to necessarily do that to his character because of everything that happened with him and Rose in The Last Jedi. But, they did do a lot of things different from The Last Jedi. And
that furthers my issue with his character, is that when you watch the other two, it's like you can absolutely see them actually seeding the Force sensitive stuff. But then to the fact that he goes to say that, and then the rest of the movie, he's like, no, I don't want to talk about it. And then he never talks about it. And then we just find out from JJ later in an interview where he's just like, oh yeah, this is what he was going to say. He was going to say he was Force sensitive. Also, weird flex when you're about to die to just say, hey, by the way, Rey, I'm Force sensitive too. What is that going to help? But it's like,
but the timing was weird, but it was so little
weird.
Moments like when he turned to Poe and Poe was like, what were you going to say to her? And he was like, you wouldn't understand.
Yeah.
Then
they
was
were
like,
just
oh,
driving.
okay.
They were just like classic JJ deciding to mess with the audience and be like, hey, remember I just gave you all these new questions, but screw you for wanting answers to those questions.
And that's the thing. It would have been so cool. I've seen people online just be like, oh, a stormtrooper turned Jedi. How awesome a storyline would that have been? It would have, but they didn't do it. They gave us nothing.
They showed us, but like it was like on the audience to tell. And I mean, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Like obviously, there's so many things that they did. Like they kind of like practically banged our head over the over the whole thing with it, like down to like the very end with the Star Destroyer and all of that jazz. Like that was, I feel like that was obvious, but yeah, what you were saying when they're going through and like trying to describe what was that thing he was going to say in the sandpit, and then they go ahead and bring it up again and then don't answer it. And it's just like,
it's classic.
Yeah,
JJ.
it was JJ expecting the audience to put the connection between, hey, I showed you he's Force sensitive, and hey, he was going to tell her something. But like, that's not what I thought at all. And I just thought, once again, because like they kind of seeded it in The Force Awakens that he was like, I wouldn't say necessarily like in love with her, but had a crush on her, and that was one of the things that like, even though I love Rose's character, I felt like it was kind of odd, and I think a lot of us feel like it was kind of odd, the relationship that kind of came out of them in that film.
Yeah. The kiss was weird.
Mirjani, what about you? Who you think are like the best and worst arcs?
Well, I'm going to go with best. It's kind of the obvious because I can't give it to Rey. I'm going to go with Kylo because it's a give me, right? So Kylo's on. It was weird because Adam Driver did a interview and he said like, basically Kylo doesn't need redeeming. What does he need to be redeemed from? And I'm like, well, 2 movies full. Like, if you think about it, Luke was the one who kind of saw this darkness in him. It was going to kill him in the last, in the Last Jedi. So he kind of goes into this darkness. He tries to have this struggle between good and bad, where he kills his father. He also kind of makes the choice not to kill Leia. So, like, for him to ultimately go for the greater good and, fight the Knights of Ren and kind of ultimately sacrifice himself, that's the most complete arc that we get. Negative, it's a combination between Finn and Rey for me. And it goes back to basically Rey being a Palpatine and Finn being Force sensitive. So remember in The Last Jedi where Kylo's talking to Rey and basically saying, like, your parents are just junk traders. They're nothing.
Such a good scene.
That was big for me because Rey's not tied to anything. Rey becomes our hero, not tied to, like, the Skywalkers, to the Palpatines, to anything like that. And it goes to the ending of the movie with Broom Kid and basically him using the Force with the broom. It's the essence of the Force. It's all around us.
I love Broom Kid.
Anybody could feel it, right?
Right.
So, like, linking her automatically to Palpatine, it's like, okay, well, like, we have to. It seems like this Force is kind of like this elitist thing where, like, the most powerful has to be connected to these 2 powerful families. And then with Finn, he picks up the lightsaber in Force Awakens. He fights Kylo, although he loses. And then he alludes to being Force sensitive again, The Rise of Skywalker, but there's ultimately low payoff. You know what I mean? Like,
was there anything in Last Jedi that seemed to insinuate he was Force sensitive? Because I don't remember any of that if it came across in that film, but I just don't.
No, it seemed like Last Jedi, he was kind of just sent on, like, a side mission with Rose.
Yeah, like
he did seem to have a lot of good luck, though, by chance, when he was on various speeders and ships and whatnot.
Absolutely.
So you're kind of like, okay, I guess I can give that to you, JJ, but I don't really want to.
Yeah.
When Finn is in Last Jedi, when he's going to sacrifice himself before Rose saves him, that I felt like they were really trying to give a parallel to, like, Luke closing his eyes in the X-wing and the Death Star, like trying to give that, like, he's trusting himself. But that's about as far as it gets. And that's me just kind of, like, watching it and being like, this is what I'm getting from it. I have nothing to say that's what it was going for.
It wasn't like the whole Star Destroyer, I feel it, I know it's that one, kind of thing. Like, that was such an odd turn. And, like, I felt like out of all of the things that they could have given us with Finn, like, that's what they gave us. Like, I would have honestly, I wrote this down, but, like, if we're talking about my best and my best and worst, I do think it really is Kylo, because there was no other way it could have ended for him. Like, I keep going, and I saw this film 3 times. I will say also, once again, since, I know, Tim, you've only seen it once.
Yes.
Berjani, have you seen it more than once yet? Or
I've seen it twice.
Okay, so I will say ultimately at the end, like, I came out feeling like 50-50, where I was like, oh, there's a lot of cool stuff that worked and it was fun, but, like, the choices that they made, like, ultimately I give JJ all the shit for it. Like, I give, like, once again, I felt like, that was one of the cool ideas that The Last Jedi had presented, was that it could be anybody. And, like, I felt like they gave us so many, at least, places that, like, they could have called back to in Last Jedi that I liked, that they didn't. Like, why didn't they have, Broomstick Kid and all of these other, like, why didn't they have her, they show her going back to Luke Skywalker's old place on Tatooine, seems to imply that that's where she's going to be taking up residence. Is she going to be training new Jedi? Like, there is some sort of, I read a few articles saying, like, the color of her lightsaber blade seems to indicate that it's, like, I guess, Jedi Guard or something like that.
Yeah, the yellow lightsaber.
Yeah.
I thoroughly enjoyed the yellow lightsaber.
Yeah. I like that. I like that, like, there was some parts that worked, and then there was just, like, I felt like some of it was cool. Like, the fan service, some of it was just bad fan service. Like, there was the whole thing with Palpatine was unnecessary. especially since like it would have been fine if they had done it in the second film, and then we had explored like, oh hey, the Emperor's back. Instead, we got, oh hey, the Emperor's back. Oh hey, the Emperor actually had a kid, and then that kid had a kid. Like, we had so much to digest, and I would have rather her just been a nobody. Like, honestly, at this point in the trilogy, I would have rather her just been a nobody, and I liked the fact that she took up the Skywalker name at the end, and I thought that was great. She didn't need to be a Palpatine, and I just felt it was silly. So I felt like Kylo really at the end, he did have the best arc, and I was a little upset that he died, so quickly after, but it makes total sense. He's not redeemable. He's done like, yeah, he is redeemable in the sense of like he can die a noble death, and that was shown in how he passed.
Yeah.
But other than that, he'd be like tried for war crimes. So it would have to be, intergalactic war crimes.
Yeah, he can't come back and be like, hey guys,
he can't
be
come
cool.
back from that. So like ultimately I found myself being okay with that part. But it was kind of a bummer to show that they like essentially struck a balance of the Force between the two of them, their bond, bringing back the Emperor in that scene, like the power that they had together. So it was kind of a bummer, but like that was another thing. It's like everyone in our first screening, everyone was just kind of like a little shocked when the kiss happened. But like in our second and third screening, people laughed during those scenes.
It's weird.
I hated the kiss.
So
did anyone
weird.
laugh at your screenings? Did anyone else laugh or like make a weird, like that's not what you want.
Yeah.
and that was the fascinating. But remember, I was with like the people I was seeing this movie with were all seeing it for their first time pretty much. Like most of the theater was seeing it for their first time.
Yeah, like that moment, it could have been such a great moment of the fact that he sacrificed his entire life force to bring her back.
Right.
And it's a great payoff from the scene earlier when she just gives a little bit of her life force to heal him.
Save him.
And so it was this great payoff, and it could have been done with just them looking at each other without saying anything, or even with like Kylo like looking at her and saying like thank you, for the fact that she saved him from the dark side basically, and then dies. Like there were so many ways you
ended up being like the fart in the elevator.
Yeah, like it was just like all right,
so bad.
I think it goes back to like the whole Finn choice thing, right? Where they're teasing this whole thing. I have to tell you something, and then and the Force Awakens, like it seems like there is some chemistry there. They ultimately pulled the love thing between Kylo and Rey, and it just felt awkward.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it was just like, really, like you guys aren't going to like. Instead, like in Last Jedi, like one of the things I had a problem with is like, oh well, like you pair Finn with Rose, and it seems like they're going to have a love story, and then they briefly hint at it in Rise of Skywalker when Rose kind of glances back when Finn's like, go ahead and go, you know what I mean? Like we're gonna, and then no payoff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Her character was done such a disservice in this film because she was ultimately like the one I felt like JJ did the worst. And she was a great character who was given a ton of shit from, once again, the worst part of the internet.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like that whole scene where she was, and I say she has the word, but all the people that I felt like had bad arcs are once again because they were written that way, not because I disagreed with what the characters were necessarily doing the whole time. It's just like, even Rose, they're like, you want to come on this adventure with us? Nah, Leia's making me stay behind and like study maps. Like it's just like, damn. And even she had this like look of like depression on her face. And I'm not saying like, like, oh, she should have smiled. It was more like, even she like looked like this is bullshit. My like homework that my mom's giving me, like. And
that's the thing. Like even her like not going on the mission with the core characters. It's like, I get that. And that's fine because that part of the movie was so jam packed, way too jam packed that whole first hour was, I'm sure we'll get to pacing, but there's that. But she, like, I get her not going with them because she's not one of the three main leads and they're going off and doing this thing. Like, that's fine. But they gave her nothing to do with where she stayed. And then we get the guy from Lord of the Rings, who I like him a lot. I like that actor, but literally almost every single one of his lines could have been hers. And then it was,
Yeah.
and I feel like it would have been better. She doesn't have to go on the adventure with all of them, but she needed to be a key character in some other way because we already knew her. But instead, JJ gives us a new character to one of his buddies that we don't care about. I don't care who he is. I don't know.
And I
his
can't even
character's
remember
name.
his lines.
Right,
Like, it's funny.
exactly.
Like, I remember everyone laughing when they saw him. I knew he was going to be in the film, so it wasn't really a surprise to me. But like, I can't even remember any lines aside from like, "There's too many of them" or something. Like, I can't remember him having more than one or two lines. So the fact that you
maybe
even
he
remember
didn't.
him
I don't.
having lines-
Maybe he didn't. I don't know. But I feel
I
like
don't
whatever
really
his
remember,
lines
but
were, it should have been hers.
Yeah, and they weren't even. Yeah, like all of these moments that like were given like would have been better servicing other things were instead servicing these other things, and it was just, sorry. I took it, but I will also say that like I want to say that like when you say like, oh, you know, she could have been doing so much back from the base, it's true because like, you know, think about it, like even Poe was stuck on that ship in that last movie, and he still found a way to be doing something. You know, it's like they had him doing things, and like this just felt like she was just so underutilized, and that was one of like I say, the bright spots of The Last Jedi for me was her and
Agreed.
that badass scene with her sister at the beginning of the film. And she was just tossed aside here, and it was a real shame.
Real quick, another minor one. General Hux. He is
so ridiculous.
He's the spy. He's the mole, and just gets shot. See ya. Like that's it.
I feel bad. I actually spoiled that for myself months ago, and I have to say, like now knowing that, because there was like no leaks for the first film. Like there were like the only leaks for the Force Awakens came from Harrison Ford accidentally in an interview. Like they kept it locked down, and this one was like they had so many leaks from this film. And I didn't even read them, but I remember reading that General Hux one that he would be like a mole before the first trailer even came out.
Oh, wow.
Like it was. And I just remember being like, oh, like I could see that, but I also could see it not happening. And then it happened. And I was like, oh my God.
I was kind of like oddly okay with it, but only for the fact that his character has just been so punchable for the entire trilogy so far that all I wanted out of his character in this movie was I was just waiting for just like, I wanted him to just get killed in a really stupid way just because, but I wanted it to be like Kylo or something like that.
Yeah.
But this ended up working out even better for me because, and I'm not saying it's good from the storytelling perspective, but I just laughed so hard when he just turns and he's like, I'm the mole. Like I lost it. And I was like, you know what? Cool. I'm into it. And then he ends up getting shot in like the most like tossed aside way, and I'm like, good, you deserve that. You don't get to turn around and just be like, I'm the mole, I'm cool now. It's like, no, you're dumb, you're dead.
Especially since he lined out his reasons to just be like, this is some Mean Girls level-esque shit.
Yeah, he's like, I just hate Kylo, but I don't like
I just
you
hate
guys either.
Kylo, like, yeah, but I hate you know, the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Yeah,
it's like, okay, he was.
I was ready for him to go, so I was just like, you know what, that was funny. I'm whatever.
Yeah. But I think I'd say it sounds like I'm Deanna. What about you? Who do you think had like the best and worst? Because it sounds like most of us agree that Kylo had a pretty decently fleshed out one.
I clearly don't like Kylo's story arc as much as you guys do, so I'm actually going to argue on Rey's behalf, because the thing with Kylo, and I wouldn't say his is the worst by any means either. I mean, you could kind of argue that some parts of it were, because for me, I would have loved to see Kylo survive at the end and then have to go through the motions of actually living with what he did, because he never really gets enough time as a good person to live with everything he did that was horrendous before that. And I would have loved to see that struggle in him. And I'm also not entirely convinced he should have been able to save Rey, because we've only seen that really used with Jedi. And you're like, okay, so clearly this is something maybe the Sith can't do, and then all of a sudden Kylo's able to do it. So I think the last part of his character arc for me was what I didn't like about it, but the rest throughout, you know, the other movies and everything, that I think worked really well for his character. But with Rey, she gets this news that she is related to one of the most horrible people in the Star Wars universe, and she refuses to accept that. So I think while I was very annoyed about the whole Palpatine thing, I was kind of relieved that at least Rey didn't accept it. And she's like, nah, I'm just going to take the Skywalker name, which, albeit isn't great, but it's better than taking the Palpatine name and just being like, yeah, but I'm good. Don't worry about it, guys.
Yeah. Like that felt like I said, everything with her being a Palpatine, just like I hated so much. And I hated like that they picked, in my opinion, like once again, if they had done it, maybe I'd feel differently if they had introduced the idea in the second film and given us more backstory to fill it in. But
at
like,
all.
Yeah, like it
No.
wasn't seeded at all. Like I much rather, and I mentioned this somewhere else in my notes, but like I felt personally that if you're going to do the whole fan service thing, make her a Kenobi, make her a Kenobi, and then have the Kenobi TV show that's coming up fill in all those gaps.
Yeah,
you know?
that
I'm not
would've
saying
been
it's my
way
first
less
choice, but
annoying.
I would have been way less conflicted, and it would have been such a better reveal, in my opinion.
Mhm.
Yeah.
To be like, oh, hey, guess what? Like Luke, you know, he started as the student and he becomes the teacher to the Kenobi line. You know, like Kenobi taught him, and then, you know, he teaches a Kenobi.
And we know that Kenobi's gone, so there would be no reason to try and bring him back for the movie. Whereas
Exactly.
we thought Palpatine was gone, but oh, just kidding, everyone, not dead. And it's
That
just
was
like,
so,
but how,
that
why,
reveal was
what?
like-
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
I feel like the Palpatine thing was the worst of Reddit theories.
yeah, and I saw that theory too.
Yeah, I saw that theory. Like, okay, Palpatine clones himself. Palpatine, like, if you read canon, if you read legends, stuff like that, okay, Palpatine has these powers,
Right.
where he could kind of like inject his essence into other clone Palpatines. But there was this scene at the end of the movie where it looked like they're in the dark area, and there's like a million different clones, and it reminded me of that scene from Spawn, when Spawn goes into hell, and then there's just these horrible like copies of himself that he has to kill. I was like, man, like,
And it wasn't even like totally clear if like Snoke was actually a real thing or if he was some clone, because it looked like they had pieces, like different Snoke clones.
I think Palpatine
in that
made some
batch.
comment that he created Snoke.
He
So
created.
it
Yeah,
sounded
yeah.
like
He
he
made
just
it.
had a bunch of them on hand
He's
in,
just
you know,
been
these
hiding
weird
in the
creepy
shadows.
tanks. I will give them credit, though, for making all the Palpatine scenes look like they came out of a horror movie. I will give them credit
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
that was cool.
That's the thing. The movie always looked cool. Like,
Yeah,
even if
it
I
looked
wasn't-
great from start to finish. Yeah,
even if
absolutely.
I didn't like what was being said or done in some areas, I could
it was
sit
a
there and be like,
beautiful
"This looks
spectacle.
great." Like this.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. That whole scene, the color tone and palette that they went with for this one was really great. The scene where they're doing the speeder chase and they have all like the fireworks and stuff, like that was great. You know, it looked great, but that was never something that was ever like something that the prequels set digital, you know, like what could be done with digital. And like no one ever argues that part. It's like not a surprise. But yeah, I just there's so much wrong at the same time that it's like overarches it.
Yeah. And, you know, like I said, I'm arguing here for Rey's character arc, but there are specific things that I want to get to in a second that I really hated that they did to her character. And, you know, I just quickly want to note the worst arc for me, hands down, was Rose, because they just did her such a huge disservice. And it was like, oh yeah, she was basically a character in this who seemed to not have any importance at all to the Resistance. And we're like, yeah, but she just had this whole movie that she did important things in, so I don't know how you get to this character arc for her, which is basically no character arc. So, you know, I am not very happy about that at all.
Yeah.
But
They took away a lot of Rose's stuff, and they basically gave it to either Janna or Zori Bliss.
right.
Even though I like the Zori Bliss stuff, especially like kind of, you know, going back to Poe and being a spice runner, and then Janna kind of being a former stormtrooper. I'm like, did we really need that? Like, we could have gave a lot more to Rose, who had a previous relationship with Finn, instead of like giving him another character to take away from either him saying "Where's Rey?" or acting on the little hint that you gave while he's with Jana. So it's like, all right, you know what I mean? Like, even though these are cool and maybe I want to see more of them, like, this is supposed to wrap up the trilogy of things that we've already done.
He introduced too many characters, I think, in this
Definitely.
one that didn't really seem to serve a greater purpose to the story.
I thought Zori Bliss did, but yeah, like just because with that coin.
Yeah, for Poe's story, I did like that introduction of Zori because I feel like they've planted a seed that they can return to with that, at least.
I would totally love a show with the two of them. Oh,
Agreed.
man. That would be, I just thought about that. Yeah.
Their moment at the end, like I loved that when they're just like looking at each other and you get the entire conversation without them saying anything.
Oh god,
like,
that was great.
It's perfect. It was
there
so
were,
funny.
Like, it's funny though. It's funny as much as I'm like I said, I feel like I left this film leaving like 50%. You know, it was just like, oh man, like the 50% that was good was really good. And then, like, the 50% that was bad was really bad. So it, like, completely evens it out where it's just like, but those were some of the things where I'm like, oh, man, the unspoken, like, communique that they had at the very end where he's like, he kind of, like, gives that look where I forget, it's like, should I? And then she's like, no. Is it this? Nah, no, it's not. But they were just, like, really cute about it. And, yeah, but absolutely. I felt like, sorry, we're getting away from, I'm getting so away from, but like Rose, she had so much she could have contributed. Other lines that, like, I think I've seen so many people say, oh, all these other characters very well could have been servicing Rose. The Jana thing too, it's like, just since we're talking about her, I was really upset that we didn't get any sort of answer about Finn. And then on addition, they're like, oh yeah, by the way, here's this other person who we don't know who her parents are. Like, neither of them know. And then for them to even walk closer to the line at the very end and have Lando be like, hey kid, who are your parents? Don't know. Well, guess what? They're not me, but let's go find them. Like,
are we sure it's not Lando though? I feel like JJ would do that.
You mean when Billy D. Williams was oddly flirting with his potential daughter?
Oh, I didn't even.
I'm like, what is going on here?
I got some real vibes from that scene, and I was like, ooh.
Here's the thing, like I know it's like obviously there's more black people in the Star Wars universe that we're not seeing, and so it's not like the only black person we had been introduced to early on was Lando, but like. I always loved the idea that maybe he would come in at the end and reveal to be like Finn's dad, or even if they had revealed that like this girl was related to Finn. We don't know anything about Finn other than he defected, and it's like so much story attention was given to Rey, and I'm just like, man, I would have really liked to know more about Finn. And
yeah, it's just like when they brought back Jana, they were like, "Hey, I defected too." And
yeah, it's like,
oh, cool. All right, let's hang out together.
Let's join a club.
But it would have been cool if they had at least revealed that they were related. Like, oh, like they find out they were taken from the same place, and then they put the two together. You know, like that would have been cool. Like, I don't necessarily need him, but any sort of like idea of where he comes from. He doesn't know anything about where he came from or his family, and so it's just like that was a bummer.
Yeah, and that's my thing with really a lot of the stuff in the movie with the the lack of Rose that we get, the too much but not enough of Finn Finn and these other characters that we get, the bit of Poe's backstory. We were introduced to so many different things with all these extra backstories or side stories. There's definitely at least 2 movies worth of material in this one movie. And my biggest thing is like, who says this needed to be a trilogy? Like, maybe they should have just done 4 movies and, spread all of this out, and maybe we would have felt better about stuff. Maybe not everything, but at least it would have been fleshed out more. And then on top of that, you finish at an even 10. That sounds pretty good for the Skywalker saga.
I would have been fine with that. Or like I said, I would have been fine with JJ just realizing like what an undertaking and how much care should have been given to this. And like, ultimately I came out feeling not quite the same, but like, I remember like at the end of the Matrix trilogy, just being like, I really wish we had just had one Matrix movie, like it just, you don't want something messing with the legacy.
Yeah. Reloaded was kind of like, you're like, what? And then like Revolutions is like, oh, that's a cool fight scene at the end. What?
Yeah.
Like, what's going on?
Oh, hey,
To go
Jesus
off-
is
I don't
here.
know about these other Matrix movies you guys are talking about. I've never heard of them.
And then now we have like more coming back, and it's just like I think like everyone's riding on the high of Keanu having like his moment again, and like
Well, that's okay because we're gonna have National Keanu Day, so I'm okay with that.
yeah, no, I'm doing wrong, all respect, but like just because things can happen doesn't mean they should.
Yeah.
And I'm starting to like, don't get me wrong, there's so much about this new trilogy that was good, and ultimately at the end of the day, like this is for new people. Like we were kids when we discovered this stuff. It's for new people, and that's why I felt like the stuff that they did really well here.
Yeah, I've been seeing a lot of people say that their kids love it, and I'm like, cool, awesome.
Yeah.
Like I'm happy to see that just the Star Wars.
Well, my childhood's ruined.
I'm happy to see
No, I'm
that
kidding.
just for generations it blends and everything. But yes, there's all those people on the internet.
To go off Deanna's point, kind of like picking Ray to kind of be the best thing, to say something positive, because it seems like I'm just like shitting all over the movie. But
I'm trying to be positive too.
Yeah.
okay, one thing that the movie does well is choices, right?
Yeah.
Ray is a Palpatine, but she ultimately chooses the good.
Yeah.
Kylo, he
Right.
gets a urge to kind of go to the dark side, but like with his talk with Han, which is very Batman versus Superman-esque.
Same screenwriter.
When Superman, it's Chris Terrio. Like he has the talk with him, like he chooses there. What I thought would have been more effective, or a thing is like with Finn, not knowing where he is from, like obviously like he's parentless. And Jonna, another cool thing that they did is like they were both stormtroopers, but they chose to kind of like go in the resistance. So I like the whole thing that they do with, you know what, like even though you may have a particular bloodline, or even though you have made bad choices in the past, you can ultimately choose the other way or be redeemed or anything of that nature. So that thing I particularly liked.
Can I also bring up, someone mentioned this, but like how you're telling me that the guy who's got the Force was a stormtrooper and shot like shit for all those years. Someone mentioned this in passing, but it's so funny. And I think especially for anyone who's up on Mandalorian, the intro scene from a recent Mandalorian episode knows what I'm talking about. But yeah, it's stormtroopers are notoriously bad at shooting, and apparently Finn is not. So how did this guy not get a promotion somewhere in his stormtrooper career? I have no idea. But yeah, no, I agree. I agree with you, Marjani, on all of that.
Well, I'm glad you went with a positive note real quick there on Rey, because I'm about to go the opposite way and go a little negative on some of the pieces of her character arc that I thought were just handled pretty poorly. And a lot of it does have to do with the pacing of the movie, which we will get to in a little bit. But I found that it wasn't super forgivable that Rey just chooses to try and kill Kylo. And the fact that she is so engrossed in beating him that she fake kills Chewie, because it just felt like one of those things where I was like, okay, this happened and they don't give you time to process it. So did you guys also find that they kind of just expected you to forgive Rey right away for the bad choices she made and just be like, oh, okay, we're just going to move past that and pretend it didn't happen?
I mean, as far as moving past it, yeah, I mean that's a whole pacing thing. As far as storytelling, that stuff didn't bother me. I actually thought I thought that stuff with Rey was pretty compelling, of just the fact that she's been building herself up with this power of the Jedi and everything, and you see in her arc of this movie, her start to lean to the other side of the Force, whether it's because she's a Palpatine or if she wasn't a Palpatine. I still think either way it would have worked, especially, and then you get the conversation with Luke later where he discusses, how running away was a mistake, and they go through all the stuff that the two of them learned together really in The Last Jedi, but then she was going down a separate path. I was fine with the particular scene. The whole Chewie thing, it's dumb. Like, it's just dumb movie logic. Like, it's just, oh, hey, she killed Chewie, but no, she didn't. It's like, we know. And it's just one of those things that I just kind of accept. I'm whatever about it. It happens in big blockbuster movies all the time where they try to do these fake outs and it just really doesn't work. We know what's coming. We know that you didn't actually fake us out. So it's fine. How I felt about that scene really comes to how I feel about the use of the Force in this movie. Deanna, you mentioned earlier, not understanding of, Kylo has this power to like give his life force too. Mm-hmm. The use of the Force is so off the charts in this movie and makes no sense of, I mean, and maybe there's extended universe stuff and whatever, but as far as it comes to the movies, you shouldn't have to read any of that stuff to understand it. But yeah. What it comes down, I'm looking at you, Kevin Feige, who tells me I have to watch all these stupid TV shows just to understand Doctor Strange 2.
I'll watch them all for you guys. Don't worry.
Yeah, thank you.
And I will absolutely be watching. And it's funny you mentioned that because I do think that like Marvel will probably do whereas like with Star Wars, you don't have to watch The Mandalorian to like understand the new Star Wars film. Although there was kind of some of that type of stuff in The Mandalorian.
Yeah.
Like the week that it came out, like was like the week before the Star Wars movie came out. It's like the whole Force healing stuff. It was like, that was kind of a thing that was introduced, but like they've never explicitly been like, oh yeah, you better. And thank God for good reason, like there are different, Mandalorian does different things well and different things not so well. And I think it works for Star Wars. I think what works for Star Wars, and we'll talk about this later, but like, playing within the sandbox, but doesn't everything have to be connected? Whereas like Marvel, I think they've got a better grip on that type of stuff. So I'm cautiously optimistic.
Yeah.
Cautiously optimistic for Marvel stuff.
Yeah. And so like when it comes to all the crazy Force stuff, you're introduced, it's like, all right, you give me the scene of her healing the weird snake thing. And it's like, all right, well, this is going to come back later. Them grabbing onto the ship and tugging back and forth. Frankly, the way I feel about a number of the scenes with crazy Force stuff is I was just totally cool with it, because what it comes down to is I was like, you know what? I've been playing Star Wars video games and stuff like that and watching Star Wars movies and everything. Using Force powers like that is just really cool to watch. And so it was one of those scenes where I felt the scene was kind of dumb, but seeing Kylo, walk out of the wreckage of his TIE fighter and then them just having this tug of war with a ship, using the Force, it just harkened back to me playing like the Force Unleashed, and I'm like, this is badass. Like
I love seeing that stuff.
Yeah. So I was like, you know what? It's like, just give me all the crazy Force powers that you can give me, because it's just, I dig it. It makes the Force more interesting.
I feel the same way. Like I played all the Force Unleashed games. I played Jedi Knight and Dark Forces as a kid. Like, you knew what Star Wars could be because of these video games, because of what you read about in the expanded universe books, but like you'd never really seen it done on film until these kind of movies came out. And that was kind of nice. And like, honestly, ultimately, like, I know the question you're kind of asking here, Deanna, is that, it's kind of that, is Rey forgivable, right? Mm-hmm. Since because of what she did,
or are those actions in particular just so easy to wave off as, oh, she made mistakes? Because to me, those were two pretty big mistakes. Like, you do not put Chewie's life in danger. What are you doing? And even though they were like, oh, just kidding, there was another transport, which is a whole different issue.
Right. Well, so here's the thing with that scene. Like, first off, I feel like right off the bat, I knew it wasn't him, because they didn't have any like shots of him like pounding on the windows and seeing her down there.
If they would have killed off
Chewbacca that way,
not only Chewbacca, they killed off Luke, they killed off Han, and Leia was going to die. If they would have killed all four, fans would have showed up to J.J. Abrams' house with pitchforks, and lighted torches. Like, there's no way they were going to kill
Chewie,
all those people off. You know what I mean?
It just felt there weren't as many consequences for Rey's actions as there should have been. Kylo's whole arc, he suffers the biggest consequence. He dies because of everything he's done beforehand. Just being good isn't enough to save him. But with Rey, it's just like, oh yeah, she pretty much killed people and we're just gonna let it go.
Well, with that scene, you know, when it was happening, I'm like, oh, Force Lightning. Oh, she has Force Lightning? That's usually a Sith power. Like, what is going on?
Yeah,
like,
so I like that
she's
reveal.
able to do this.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I'm like, I'm like, I think that now if they didn't do the whole big thing in the beginning where Palpatine's like, you know, like the dead speak, and then like Palpatine is kind of cloning Snoke's, you know, like chia pets or whatever like that. And like if they would have did that, like switch that scene first, where it's like, oh, Rey has like Sith powers, like what the hell is going on?
Yeah.
Like, all right, there's more to this.
Great point.
I liked it particularly because with the Sith, they act on anger, they act on rage, and this was the point where Rey was kind of doing that in a kind of standoff with Kylo. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's this whole tug of war thing, and it kind of went into like The Last Jedi where she's like doing the training and they show the whole mirror image of herself.
Yeah.
And then again, when she goes into the old Death Star and goes into like that like whole Sith thing where she sees the darker image of herself.
That was cool.
There's this whole play on like the darkness within her. So I didn't really hate that. Like what Tim said, like I hated the Chewbacca thing. I'm like, okay, this is an obvious fake out. Like, you know what I mean? Like you didn't really need to like have Rey like, oh my God, I killed Chewbacca. And then I think not even 2 scenes later, they're like, Chewbacca's on the ship.
Yeah, and you find out before they do. You find out before
Yeah.
they do. So it's like, how are you supposed to feel sympathetic knowing he's actually alive? Like, it just like completely took it out of that. Like, if we had found out, the only forgivable thing would be if we had found out with them at the same time. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the audience knows like before like the trio knows. So like it's like, oh, Chewbacca's on the ship. All right. It was basically a placeholder for them to go to their next mission.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
we have to go to the Imperial ship to like rescue Chewbacca now. It was like the thing to me with this movie is there's a hell of a lot of conveniences.
Yes.
Okay?
Many, many, many.
There's an automatic gassed up ship for them like just sitting there
You mean the ship that's been sitting in the desert all this time?
for, you know what I mean? Like the whole Wayfinder thing where Rey kind of like takes it and is like, oh, there's a compass here. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's just like those conveniences is like, all right, well, like I don't know if it's the Force or anything like that. There's obviously either screenwriting or something like that is basically helping them on their way at every given point. So it's like, all right, well, Chewbacca's quote unquote death is just basically to advance the plot, and it's kind of cheap.
Yeah. And I know it's funny because I know I just said like, I don't like, despite me not loving the fact that she's a Palpatine, it would have been a cooler reveal than just knowing like you said, it would have been a much cooler reveal had they done it that way, where they're like, instead of like, oh, surprise, he's been alive this whole time, and here he is at the beginning of the film, and like they were just so cavalier about being like, oh yeah, by the way, the Emperor's back in this movie. Like they weren't even making it like whatever happened to reveals. Like that was like at least what we thought we were going to be getting, and they've just been like, just don't care, you know? Like I think it was like also once again like their way of saying, hey guys, like we're trying to steer the ship back into a way that like the fanboys think our movie should go. And it was just so sad. And like, but like, yeah, I feel like Rey, the stuff that she did, you know, also, I also just realized like when they were fighting over the ship, they also fought over the lightsaber in the film before it. And so like that was a theme I didn't even put together until now, but like, I guess that part was cool, but yeah, it was like the first time we had seen her angry, because if you think about it, the first few times they fought, like even in the first film, she was like trying to tap into the light side when they're on that like, you know, big Death Star killer base planet or whatever, and they're fighting the first time.
I guess what annoyed me most with the fake Chewie death scene was how quickly they just got over it and left. They were like, no, Chewie, and then bye.
Yeah. I mean, they were being
mission.
chased, to be fair, you know, but like, they didn't really like even have any sort of like grieving scene or anything that I remember afterwards, because they were just being chased from that.
Yeah, and then because we do find out he's still alive, like what,
The
2
tension's
minutes
gone.
later?
Audience doesn't give a shit anymore.
Oh, okay. And I just meant more so the action of Rey possibly putting Chewie in that position, because she should have known better to just let the transport go and go rescue Chewie later, because that's what happens anyway.
But that kind of goes to the whole dark side thing too. It's just like when you're tapped into that kind of side of yourself, and she has such hatred for Kylo that like she basically discards all that. It's all like a position of power. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
they were kids
when
fighting
she
over a toy.
When she like, first of all, when she grabbed the ship of the Force, I was like, yo, like, what? Like, she's using the Force to grab an entire damn ship.
Yeah.
Like, I thought that was the cool, like, reveals of her being so strong in the Force. Yeah. But, like, that's kind of my rationale for it.
And actually, Deanna, I just thought of this as we've been discussing it, and I meant and realized that I was talking about that scene where she ends up speaking with, like, Force Ghost Luke. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to have to defer to those of you who have seen it more than once to see if I have the timeline of when this happens correct. But I'm pretty sure, like, the scene with, like, Chewie and stuff like that happens, and, you know, she freaks out and she used this power. She tapped into the dark side. I don't remember how long after she ends up, you know, running away to the island and then having the conversation with Luke. But I feel like that conversation with Luke is kind of her reeling with the consequences of how she's been reacting to the Force. Like, she's horrified of her own power and is like, I'm gonna go. I just need to hide away because I can't be trusted. Like, I can't be trusted with this power. And so I do feel like she does deal with that. I would definitely agree that, I mean, in terms of the movie's pacing, and we keep dancing around it, the pacing's just bad. Like, it's bad. It's rushed. It sometimes has these really wonderful, beautiful, quiet moments, but then before you know it, boom, we're on to the next thing.
Yeah. I think they go, Poe, like, all right, we got to go to Kimchi because they have to get the Sith dialogue from C-3PO.
Right.
Yeah.
And then that's when they do that. Then Rey senses that Chewbacca's alive.
Yes, that's right. I was trying to remember if she knew how she knew it, because I remember that they found out. I just couldn't remember how. And yeah, that whole thing.
I guess I was just more upset with the fact that by the end of it, Rey actually suffered no consequences, because she didn't kill Kylo. She turned around and saved him. And then she didn't really kill Chewie, and Chewie's fine at the end. So for Rey herself, there weren't as many consequences as I thought they were going to have with that struggle between the light side and the dark side. But, you know, like I said, overall...
Well, you got Leia's passing. You know, I guess you could say, like, Leia's passing was like, I don't, maybe I'm misunderstanding what you're getting at. I mean, I'm thinking you're saying, like, it sounded like you were saying, like, Kylo, you know, she kills him, but then she brings him back, and then
like 2 seconds
Chewie,
later,
but he's dead. Yeah. But like Leia, I guess, would be the only lasting thing that came from that type of stuff, right? Because she did not come back, and Ben did. I guess Ben, you know, she killed Ben and then brought him back, and then he died anyway. So
right, I mean,
but I guess she didn't do that one, so it's not really her fault.
Yeah, it was more of just in the moment. I was kind of like, okay, well, you know, even though people would have hated it, maybe they should have killed Chewie. And, you know, Leia, her situation for me was totally different simply because of Carrie Fisher's passing in real life. That was a story arc that I was much more willing to forgive. I wasn't a huge fan of what they did with the character, but they did what they could given this.
Yeah.
Right, exactly, given the circumstances. But
I'll take that over a Grand Moff Tarkin.
Yeah, I know we've been touching on pacing here and there throughout, so why don't we go ahead and talk about that a little more, because there are a lot of pacing issues, and I think we're all pretty much in agreement on that, but, you know, there are still quite a few things we want to get to here, so let's just hit the pacing real quick and carry on.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I've almost said as much as I can for the pacing. The whole
Fair.
first half, whole first half of the movie should have been its own movie. Maybe if JJ wanted to erase The Last Jedi, like Jonathan said, he should have just done all 3 movies, and the first half of this movie could have been the second movie.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, but it was jump to this, jump to this, jump to this, jump to this. The second half of it, the pacing was definitely a lot better. It just felt like every time I was given some new interesting storyline that I was like, oh, this is so cool. Boom, we're gone. And we're moving on. And so it's the movie's biggest flaw, and that, everyone can have their different opinions of what character choices and things, but when it comes down to it, the pacing is just too rushed. And everyone I've spoken to, even the ones who thoroughly enjoyed the movie, say that it was just a lot all at once, and it was so hard to just process what was happening. And then afterwards, you're just questioning things because you can't remember when they happened because they happened too quickly.
I agree. Like, I felt like they introduced all this like cool stuff at the beginning, but pacing was ultimately so awkward. They go from planet to planet. Like, I guess I kind of understand. Like, I was actually kind of hoping they would not go back to Octo or Octu or whatever the hell Luke's planet of exile was.
Just a little island.
And, because I never wanted to see Porgs ever again.
You shut your mouth.
Unless it's like on Chewbacca's plate at dinner. I don't get me wrong. I love for some reason
Force
Porgs
Ghost
have just
Luke just eating porgs.
just like chilling. But like, once again, like, I understand like the exile end of it, and that's why she went there. But Force Ghost Luke can show up anywhere; it doesn't have to be there. But like, I ultimately, like, I understand it. She was trying to exile herself, and she was trying to like go down the path he had gone, finding out the info that she had. But it was just, they just go so many places, and it's like by the time you start to like settle in, it's like you said, we're going somewhere else, and like, it's just it reminds me of that scene, and if anyone watches Rick and Morty, there's a new episode where like they're doing a heist episode, and they just keep going place to place. You son of a bitch, I'm in. Like, very quick. Very quick, like, we're going all these different places, and we're introducing all these new people, and we're doing it at like breakneck speed. So just like, hopefully you aren't like too drawn to anything, because we're not going to stay here long. But what do you think, Marjani?
First 30 minutes of this movie was insane.
Yeah.
Like, it was just like, boom, Exegol. Boom, we go back to the Rebel base, and we see like Rey doing some practice with Princess Leia there. Then boom, we go to Rey, Finn, and Poe, Chewbacca, BB-8, and C-3PO going into Millennium Falcon. Then boom, all right, we're learning about Ochi. We're going to see if his ship is there. All right, we see Lando. Boom. It was just like plot point after plot point after plot point after plot point. You had to like catch your breath, and it was like the second and third acts of the movie was like catching your breath. It was like, okay, all this stuff happened, and then now it seems like we're kind of settling into the big finale. And I don't know if it really took away from the finale for me, but it was such at a breakneck speed that I kind of agree with you guys. Like, why even have a trilogy? Why have, you've done it before where you've had part 1 and part 2. Break this up into 2 movies. And it goes back to the point of kind of Disney's handling with Lucasfilm and kind of like the Star Wars franchise. Like, if you look at, say, Solo, right? Lord Miller completes 70% of the movie, and then they get booted off. and
that's filmed
because it's not Star Warsy enough. You know what I mean? So with 3 different directors, like, initially you were going to have 3 different movies. You were going to have 3 different interpretations of what Star Wars is. And here, like, like we've said before, like, bringing JJ back, and he's like, all right, this is what I did in Star Wars Force Awakens, right? This is what I would have did if I stayed for 8. Let me explain to you what I would have done. And then here's the movie of what Rise of Skywalker should be. Then that's what it felt like. The pacing is crazy until maybe the last 30 minutes of the film, where you're like, okay, like, I can kind of like rest easy now and kind of take it in all this information. But there's so much information that you get that if you're not if you don't know canon, if you don't know legends or stuff like that, it's going to go over your head, or there's so many threads that are open that you're like, all right, are they intentionally doing this for Disney Plus down the line, or they're just not going to explain it?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, it's definitely like kind of tossed in. It's tossed some doubt into everything. Like I said, I really enjoy The Mandalorian. I mean, it's not perfect, and we'll talk about that eventually on this show. But like, it's not perfect, but like, it shows what like living inside the Star Wars sandbox can be like. If done, and for all the shit it gets, like, I thought Solo was okay. It was fun. I do agree that like it was a little bit of a bummer that if you're gonna hire directors, like, let them do their thing, like, as much as, and also kind of in a weird way. Now I'm wondering if a Colin Trevorrow third film would have been so bad, because I remember.
But here's the thing, like, even with Rogue One, it was supposed to be darker.
Yeah.
It was actually supposed to be darker than a lot of it was. And then, like, Disney stepped in and was like, all right, can we Star Wars this up a little bit? That's why you get more Darth Vader to it. Not that I'm complaining. I love that scene at the end. And, like, I love when they go to Mustafar to his castle. But, like, Disney kind of, like, impeding on the progress a little bit. And you've heard this, with DC and Warner Brothers a little bit, like, kind of like the studio stepping in is like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like, this was a little darker and the audience didn't really respond to it well. Let's do this another way, instead of kind of like what they're doing now and kind of these movies taking on the ideas of the director first.
Yeah, there's even a cut or a draft of Rogue One where they didn't all die at the end.
Yeah.
There's like, I don't remember which ones survived, but I remember it wasn't all of them going out in this like famous blaze of glory style that they did, which I thought ultimately worked. But
Rogue One I really like, except for CGI Grand Moff Tarkin, because that's just gross.
Oh yeah, it's just so I watched that the other day and it was just like so disruptive. Yeah, I just felt like the pacing is just fucking weird.
It was so off that I had taken a notebook and pen into the theater thinking I was going to take notes, and I was like, oh my goodness, so much is happening. My brain can't even process this to write notes down, and if I write notes down, I'm going to miss part of the movie because it's going so fast. And I was like, all right, fine, I'm not taking notes. And so I just like put that away, and I was like, all right, hopefully I remember enough for the podcast, because I knew we were going to have a little bit of a gap between all of us watching it and recording this because of the holidays. So I was like, oh boy, here we go. And it was just a wild ride, not in the good sense at all. I was like, okay, information overload. Don't know what the brain's doing. I don't know what they're doing. Okay, we're just going here and going there. And I guess this is hopefully going to work out in the end, but kind of sort of doesn't. And, I wanted to bring up one of the other things that really stood out to me, and Mirjani, you mentioned the Wayfinder earlier, and that's all that the Jedi texts are used for in this. So I was wondering what you guys thought of how JJ used the Jedi text, because it just felt like they were one line and then gone.
I'm not going to lie. I could have sworn they were burned in Yoda's tree fire in The Last Jedi. Like,
I think Rey saved them at the very last minute.
I think you see them stuffed into her book bag or whatever at the end of the film, and it's like revealed that it's on the Falcon. But it's something I completely missed as well.
Yeah,
so.
But also to me, it's like they should have been burned in the tree, or maybe if they weren't, I agree, they could have been used in a much better way, because it's like when you look back at that great scene in The Last Jedi where it's Luke and Yoda's being like talking about the Jedi text, and he's like read them, have you? And Luke's like, well, I dabbled a little, and he's just like, page turners they were not. And the whole conversation is about that. It is about that maybe it's time for the Jedi way to move on and be this new generation and not hang on to these ancient texts. And that was just another way that I felt like this one just kind of like stepped on that it was like, oh, but we are going to use these texts, but not give it any kind of an interesting factoid or an interesting way of handling the text, or why Rey would find something useful in it, except a map for a treasure hunt.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't really have much to say about the text, except that it was just used kind of in a lame way, in the same way that, frankly, in The Force Awakens, as much fun as that movie is, the whole search for Luke thing with the map, that just doesn't make sense. Why is R2 just asleep the whole time? And then he just happens to wake up at the end, and even though BB-8 like tries like knocking on him earlier to be like, hey, wake up. No, he's not going to wake up then. He's just going to wake up at the end, and here, let's put this map to. So I'm JJ seems to have a thing for maps and treasure hunts, and it was dumb, and I don't really have much else to say, except I thought the texts were burned.
Yeah, it's the same thing with like C-3PO. Is like, okay, well, he gets his memory wiped, but they mentioned offhand like, hey, R2-D2 has a backup. So it's like, all right, well, even though he got these like the Sith sayings or whatnot, like he's gonna get his memory back eventually. So it was like, all right, well, like that plot point was kind of useful for whatnot. That going back to Tim's thing,
it was really funny though.
Yeah, it was hilarious. Like he's like, "Who are you?"
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like
that's gonna get old. He's like, that's gonna get old. I'm like, oh god. I thought 3PO was great in this movie though. It's the most 3PO movie.
Yeah, I love it.
He really was. Shout out to 3PO. Because I feel like he hasn't really gotten anything to do in these new ones, and this one he rocked it.
And I feel like 3PO is shining when he's annoying. Like,
yes,
he was just like he was so extra in this film. It was kind of delightful. Like you're just like, oh man, like it's funny. Like because he's always, not to say I don't like 3PO. Like he's just always been a character I've never really thought about. He's not like R2 or something. Like he's just he does a lot. Don't get me wrong. Like I'm not trying to shit on Anthony Daniels. Is that?
Yeah, Anthony Daniels.
Yeah, he's great, but like I just haven't thought of him much in recent years. He's like been kind of like tossed into these movies, and finally he gets to go on one of the adventures. He
got to actually serve the plot instead of just be like, "Oh, remember this character that was really important in the other movies?" Yeah, he's still around.
Hey, he's still hanging around.
Yeah, in case you forgot you were watching Star Wars.
Yeah. But no, he was great.
To go off Tim's point, the conversation with Yoda and Luke is actually one of my favorite scenes in the whole trilogy.
Agreed.
Because, like he said, you know what I mean? Like Yoda's like, all right, you're teaching Rey your successes, right? But teach her folly, teach her failure. Failure is a big part of the lessons too. Like teach her how you failed with, Kylo Ren, like, because that ultimately failure leads to success. You could learn, you could adapt. And I feel like the whole thing with the Jedi text and him burning the Jedi Temple is kind of like Rian Johnson's take on fandom, because he's, saying like Star Wars, okay, it was this thing. Like there's obviously generations of Star Wars fans that like feel like it's this particular thing to them. But the Star Wars story, it's so vast and there's so many characters, and like it doesn't have to just be narrowed to this, all right, Luke has to be this. Like he ultimately has to live. You know what I mean? Like Leia has to be this. Stuff like that. Like I felt like it was kind of like an allegory for like Star Wars can be anything that you want to be. Like Rey can be, just kind of like a junk trader, but you know what? She's one of the most powerful Force beings just because, you know what I mean? Like I felt when they brought it back and they brought back the Wayfinder thing, I was like, okay, like we need another, like you said, another treasure hunt. But I like how they discarded the whole thing in Last Jedi, and basically, Luke's thread saying like, all right, well, this has to be the Jedi way. Like I have to have a Padawan. I have to teach him. There always has to be a rule of two. Yoda's like, forget all that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't have to be this way. And that's kind of like my thing with the Jedi thing.
Yeah, I feel like everything, like I said, like one of the most compelling things about Last Jedi was that it didn't have to be all of these things that we were expecting it to be. even though it was a little jarring at first to walk out and find, oh, her parents are nobodies. Okay. Like, and then it just, all of it to be tossed away, you know. I also want to say that, like, I personally hated the Han flashback vision thing. Like, I don't know why, but like, it's so funny for a movie that does so many like flash, like visions, but at least when they're like force visions, it's like, it works. But for me to have him just like kind of like see his dad just felt so unnecessary, even though they were like kind of like, I understood what they were trying to do with like having them repeat the scene almost verbatim from Force Awakens, but show him actually like toss the saber this time is like, I got it, but it just, I still think it was unnecessary.
Chris Terrio was like, I'm going to get that Jonathan Kent scene from Batman and Superman in this movie somehow.
Yeah.
And like my thing is I really enjoyed that scene. Well, two things. One is I think what that scene serves, I think clearly was meant for Leia, but naturally they couldn't do it because the way everything was happening in the movie, she was trying to reach out to him, and obviously you didn't have Carrie Fisher to do that scene. So for me, it worked in a way of it was just a visual representation, and I get kind of nerdy about that type of like philosophical take on the filmmaking, and I really enjoy that. But what I liked is what it represented. I liked how they said a lot without saying much in that scene. Definitely. I mean, there were not a lot of times in this movie where I was like actually like emotionally affected or invested. But when I just hear Harrison Ford just go, "Hey kid," I was like,
yeah. I mean, there were parts. Okay, now think about it. There were parts. I also did like him saying "Dad," and he goes, "I know."
Yeah. Oh, that was
that was cute.
I definitely agree. Like, it is kind of like it's one of those things in the same way with just all the new Force powers. It's like they've never really done anything like this kind of a scene like in these movies. So
like maybe it would have been less jarring to me if he was glowing blue and but like also he's not a Jedi, so it's
right.
Like,
so I liked that he wasn't a Jedi because I was nervous that they would do that.
Yeah.
But definitely it does feel like
it's weird. It's just different.
Yeah, and it does feel like it. I mean, it is 100% the scene from BVS, but I laugh because I'm like, oh, this is that scene if it was good, because the scene, like the scene with Jonathan Kent, is one of the worst scenes I've ever sat and watched. I'm like, oh, cool, Ghost Dad, thanks for coming back and telling me about how the farm flooded one time. Like, it's at least in this, it was like, oh, cool, I got something emotionally, out of that, and the character clearly learned something from this scene. However, he was working it through in his brain, or if it was Leia projecting it to him, I don't know, but it worked. I'm like, okay, Chris Terrio, fine, you got a second chance for that scene, and you did it better.
Okay, fair.
Yeah,
fair.
Even like with the subtle thing with Kylo kind of fumbling with the lightsaber, it reminded me of The Force Awakens when he ultimately stabs him with it.
Yeah.
And this time he's like, no, I'm not going to choose that way. And you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And the voice of reason kind of goes into him and then he tosses it.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, that to me was a beautiful scene. Like, it's like, oh, he's actively making a choice there. And that's what Star Wars, and I feel like this movie was trying to say, like, that's what it was about.
Yeah.
It was cool finding out Leia had a lightsaber.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was cool.
I did like that scene where they were showing them training. Oh, man.
That was cool.
Makes you wish that you had gotten sequel films or this type of stuff back when this movie came out.
Yes.
Like,
I would have loved like a Star Wars trilogy during like Air Force One era Harrison Ford. Like, just something after. I mean, I'm glad we got a new Star Wars trilogy now, but I would
when we did, yeah, sure.
Yeah, but I would have liked to have had something in between the Return of the Jedi and this trilogy where we would have gotten more of that stuff. Maybe people would have been a bit more accepting of some of the Luke stuff if they had a visual representation of his journey and getting to see him be the Jedi that they all wanted to see, instead of just filling in the, for me, I fill in the blanks of the fact that, a lot happens in 30 years. It's a shame we didn't. Yeah, it's a shame we don't really get that. But So it's like I can sit and watch The Last Jedi and be like, all right, I'm trusting that this is where his character went and it makes sense in what you've given me. But it would have been nice to have seen what occurred in that time. And maybe the comic books will do it. But once again, I shouldn't have to read all of those, even though I am reading them and they're actually a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, I think that also for a lot of us who read expanded universe stuff, and I think that's why a lot of us feel this way. It's like, oh, we were doing our best to like imagine it in our heads by reading the books, by playing the video games, like anything from that timeline before Disney kind of came in and decided to reinvigorate, we had through the expanded universe. And oh God, I was going to say something to go off Tim's point. Now I'm forgetting it, but it was just there was a lot set up here that could have worked, and some worked and some didn't. But yeah, I also felt it was. Yeah, I'm just gonna. Sorry.
I think for me, and I'm going to credit this to Drew Deach because he's the one who tweeted about it and I saw it, but he brought up the point that the Jedi texts were essentially a blank slate because we got some information from them, and then JJ just turns around and uses it as a map, and we're like, okay, there has to be so much more in these books that could have been used or could have been created from the story group to take this in a different direction. And instead, he just kind of squashes that and is like, nope, we're just going to use it as a map. And that's all Rey's going to get out of those books that she has been studying for quite some time now, because we see her returning to them. And you can kind of get this feeling that she is very intrigued with these books. And that's why she saved them in The Last Jedi in the first place. So it really just felt like they kind of squandered an opportunity with those there.
Palpatine is basically making an entire army on the Outer Rim and Exegol, but yet there's the Wayfinder there that will find exactly where he is. That's it. That's the conveniences that, like, I mean, that didn't kind of, because you got to find him
right
before he, unleashes these like ships with basically Death Star technology on everybody. But it was like, oh, well, here we go, a Wayfinder, and one gets destroyed, but there's another one that she finds. Like, I don't know.
And as you guys all know, I read a lot. So for me, it was disappointing that the books got shorthanded. I was like, no, but I want to know what the books say. The nerd in me really wanted that.
Yeah, the Legends books got shorthanded too, because like a lot of them go into what happens with Leia, what happens with Luke, what happens with Han even. And I mean, I know you can't really reference all of that in a almost 2.5 hour movie, but a lot of the stuff that goes into it, like, for some of us, like, I think all of us have kind of read like some of the comics and like backstory, and so you may be a little bit familiar with. Somebody who's just watching the trilogies and all the insider stuff, they're like, what is that?
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know anything about that. So like, I don't know. Hopefully it leads people to kind of dig in more of the Star Wars universe, because there is a lot more to it. There's a real rabbit hole you can go down. But yeah, like there are some scenes that
that's kind of what it's done for me. And I mean, I think a couple of years ago, I binged a bunch of the Star Wars audiobooks. The audiobooks are a lot of fun because they have like music and sound effects in them and everything. And I was really enjoying them. And it's some of them, I think a lot of the ones I've been listening to have been Legend stuff. But then it's like this movie, I really, even though I feel like I've been really down on it, like I was let down by the lack of cohesion of a trilogy more than anything. Like the movie on its own, I'm like, sure, that was fine. It was fun. There's weird choices, but as an individual movie, sure, I could probably throw this on anytime and have a good time with it because I'm just going to be enjoying the spectacle and not thinking about it. But what I'm most let down upon is just the potential for such a through line great trilogy, and it just doesn't feel like there's anything to that. And so I didn't get that with this movie, but it's not like it sours me on Star Wars. I mean, for me, even bad Star Wars is still Star Wars. Like I still find something I enjoy about it.
Exactly, which I think is like the overarching theme I've been trying to explain to people.
Yeah.
It's just like, hey, we're getting more Star Wars, like for better or worse, this is what it is. And I feel like everyone kind of feels like, even though we're describing something where we were let down, we almost weren't also at the same time. Like it was just
like,
not
we still got it.
Yeah, we still got mostly where we wanted to go. It's just there's like, once again, I think a lot of this could be attributed to J.J. Abrams, like not necessarily always being able to finish a story. I think that there's like examples of places where he really does a good job with it, and like Lost is like, I personally didn't have a huge problem with the finale, but there were a lot of things that didn't get answered for some people. But then I feel like in like stuff like Super 8, I think he did a great job, from beginning to end, and his kept
Mission
it
Impossible
simple.
Was good.
Yeah, and Mission Impossible even. Yeah, exactly. Like he does great work, and that's why, like I said, I came out of this being pissed at him. He's like the dad that broke up the family. Like he's like, I'm gonna like do this great movie, that like, it was like we played it a little safe, but general people loved it, loved all these characters, and then I'm gonna like abandon ship.
I feel like at the same time, like I kind of do feel for him a little bit, because he walked back into a situation where he didn't think that he was going to direct, because we all thought Colin Trevorrow was. Then he left. Then he goes back to a situation where Disney probably put pressure on him, because they're like, "Yo, we're catching a lot of heat for Last Jedi. Like we have to kind of bring this ship into being more Star Warsy." So he's kind of caught in between two worlds. He's like, I gotta, I have to be complimentary of Rian Johnson, which I think after the initial thing came out, like he was, and he said that he really appreciated it.
Yeah.
But he also has to say that because like studio wants like, all right, well,
toe the line.
We want more of a Star Wars. Yeah, they want him to toe the line.
They had to save face a lot for this one. And, maybe I'll forgive JJ for squashing the Jedi texts if Lucasfilm or Del Rey Books decides to release like actual books of the Jedi texts. I think that would be something that would be cool.
That'll be your Christmas gift next year. I got you.
But I warn you, I warn you, Yoda says page turners, they are not. So yeah, I think for.
But Deanna loves to read.
That's true. That's true. I know she'll finish them regardless. But
hey, I've been finishing Stephen King books regardless of how good they are. So
if you can make it through some of those,
well, I know we definitely touched on Palpatine throughout, so we don't need to necessarily dive directly into that. I don't think any of us have more to add on that front.
Yeah,
but I do want to try to end this on a more positive note. So
me too.
Are there any other specifics that you guys liked about this movie? We'll talk about this, and then we'll talk a little about the future of Star Wars to wrap things up here.
Yeah, definitely. Like where to begin? Well, Babu Frick. Seriously. Yeah. All hail Babu Frick. I would watch 2 hours of him randomly popping in saying, hey, in any film or TV. Seriously, someone on YouTube put it together.
They put a loop together for Tim of just Babu Frick saying, hey, that's going to be my new my new text sound.
Right?
Hey!
Yeah. Like just someone just start editing him into like Law and Order episodes and I'll sit and watch it for hours. But no, it's like this movie, it's like, as regardless of decisions or whatever, it still it felt very Star Wars. It looked great. The sound was great. The score was fantastic. I absolutely love. I mean, who doesn't love John Williams? But one of my favorite things that they did with The Last Jedi was they released a version where you could watch it just with the visuals and the score. Please, Disney, do that again for The Rise of Skywalker. I would love to just stare at these gorgeous visuals while listening to the score by itself. But it's there were a lot of things that I really enjoyed about this. I really had a lot of fun with the grand set pieces, the lightsaber battles, seeing Wedge Antilles come out of nowhere with Lando. Like that was super cool. C-3PO was a ton of fun. Poe and his past life, I really liked that. JJ continuing Kylo and Rey's force timing. That I really enjoyed that. And he even expanded on that, like doing the cool way that it was filmed, their lightsaber duel, even though they were in two separate locations, I thought that was really well done. Her, putting the lightsaber behind her back and him, him grabbing it and then doing the Han Solo shrug, like, come on, like, aren't you impressed? There was so many great moments that I had a good time with. And, I'm with you guys. It's like, as much as I'm critical of some decisions that JJ made, I also feel like regardless of whether or not he made the decisions that we like or what somebody else liked, he was put in a position. One, he had to come back into this movie, after not expecting to, but also he's closing out the Skywalker saga with, unfortunately, a really, really toxic fandom. When it comes down to it, there's no way for him to pull it off. He's not gonna succeed with everybody. I wonder if the fandom would have been happy with anything. So I don't know, but ultimately it's not everything that I wanted it to be. But there were still so many sequences and things that I can thoroughly enjoy and have a ton of fun with. I really enjoy that this film is an audition tape for why Oscar Isaac should replace Tom Holland as Nathan Drake in the Uncharted movie that will never see the light of day, but I will still keep fighting for that recasting. Yeah, I mean, it definitely had a lot of great fun and positive moments that I do really enjoy. And I'm excited to see it a second time. Yeah. I'm excited to see it with my sister, who's been going into all these movies fresh. And frankly, she does not get super critical about movies when she watches them. It's so refreshing to sit and watch them with her, because I'm like, we finished one and I'm like, what'd you think? She's like, oh, loved it. Had a great time. Like,
she looks at the overall feeling she gets versus like all like nitpicking everything. And I wish I'd be a much happier person if I could enjoy things at that type of level.
Yeah. So a tiny side story. So my sister is involved in Special Olympics, and the motto that they have, at the beginning of their competitions is "Let me win, and if I cannot win, let me be brave in the attempt." And it's this great motto. And when we were watching A New Hope, I jokingly was like, this is ridiculous. Chewie doesn't get a medal. And she turns to me and goes, at least he was brave in the attempt. And I'm like, that is the single greatest thing I've ever heard. And it's like, that's just been her viewpoint of watching these movies. And so when I'm watching this one, when I'm thinking back to it critically, I'm trying to think of, well, what were the positive things that I had a good time with? Because even when I watch the prequels, there's things that I don't like about them, but I still had fun with them. Yeah. So I'm hoping to continue that with this one and kind of get all of my. I feel like at this podcast I've gotten everything I need out of it, and so maybe now I can. I've said it all, and now I can just move.
Now you can
move
live
on
with your thoughts
and live with my thoughts, and just have a good time. So it's there. There's definitely a lot of positive, even if it feels like we've been a lot of negative.
Mirjani, what did you like about it?
I just love seeing Rafin and Poe together again.
Yeah.
Because I felt like the entire Last Jedi movie, like they were all on separate journeys. Like Poe is trying to learn how to be a leader and getting punished. Obviously, Rey's in her training, and then Finn's on his side story with Rose. It was just good to see the gang back together again. It was good seeing Lando and Chewie on the Millennium Falcon again, because Chewie has seemingly lost everybody that he was friends with, kind of like from the original trilogy. So like it was good to see him back with somebody that he knew.
Yeah.
Some of the action set pieces were gorgeous. Like when Rey flips over
Kylo's tie.
Kylo's like TIE fighter,
so cool.
TIE fighter, and that was so cool. Like some of the cinematography in this film is amazing. I know some people didn't like it, but like I love how the callback at the end where Palpatine shows Rey, like, and he does like the whole force power thing. He's like, look at your friends. It was a callback to like Return of the Jedi. I thought that was pretty cool. And the fact that like our protagonist is a female, it's Rey. You know what I mean? Like, who would have thought like maybe like 20, 30 years ago, you had basically something big. It was built around Anakin and Obi-Wan. Then like the original is kind of like Luke's journey, basically, and then you have Rey, like it's a female heroine. Like I thought that was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I love the growth of Poe. Like obviously you lose Leia, but Poe has become like, the rousing leader that he needed to be, where he kind of maybe wasn't and basically the Force Awakens. Like, I love his growth. Listen, for everything that we've said, there are some points where I felt, that moment where, like, you feel in Star Wars where the magic happens, especially with John Williams' score and all the callbacks with Rey's theme, that what he does throughout. Basically, like, everything that he's done from every movie that he has scored in. There's still some magical moments that you feel, you're like, you know what? I'm in a Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care whatever I was experiencing. Maybe I was mad about this, but I'm happy about this.
Yeah.
Like, there are enough moments for me to wanted to see it a second time. And then, when it comes out on Disney Plus, I'm going to watch it again, like, ultimately.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I feel very much the same way. It's like, it's a very distinct feeling you get from watching a Star Wars film. And even despite, not agreeing with every choice that they've made, you get this rush. And like, I can say, like I said, as a person that saw it 3 times in 24 hours, and I saw it, those 3 times I saw it, 2 of the people I went with to every showing with me. So we all saw it and we were kind of like reacting the same way. We're like, first time we're like, oh God, not sure how I felt about that. And the second time we're like, oh, but there's so much fun stuff happening and there's so many good things. And so ultimately I came out with a really balanced feeling. Like, yeah, we've spent so much time saying, but there was so much right. Babu Frick, like, I never feel more Star Wars-y than when he came on. Like, he was just reminded me of OG Star Wars and the types of noises that those aliens made.
Yeah.
And just like the feeling you get. It's just like, it's like in your body, in your bones, the type of world that George Lucas originally built. Babu Frick, I know it's such a silly thing, but he was like, I don't feel that way when I see, like, Baby Yoda's cool. Don't get me wrong. Baby Yoda's like a really fun character and it's fun, but like, he doesn't because he's like an archetype of a character that came before, like someone, I guess he's not, he is, something that we've already seen. Whereas like Babu Frick is like this really cute little interesting character. And like, that's why I felt like, you can have characters like, was it Dio and Babu Frick. You don't need to go back and see the Porgs. You don't need to go back and see the Ewoks. Like, I felt, I like the original stuff, and there was plenty of that here. The chase scenes, the humor between the characters. Yeah, I think we've all touched on the bond that Rey and Poe and Finn have. The bond, and I personally would have loved to see a buddy, like a buddy film for them for the second film.
Yeah.
I was expecting something like, obviously because this is where my head went, but like Empire Strikes Back, where you had that whole side mission with Han and Leia and getting stuck inside the asteroid monster thing. Like, I was expecting something like that, and we kind of, I guess in a way, got that. But like, this film had plenty of the action and the lightsaber. Also, I wrote down the lightsaber battles in this were, I think, the best lightsaber battle I've seen in any of those 9 films. It's like the coolest stuff for lightsaber stuff. And especially those of us who, it sounds like a few of us have played video games and stuff. We know what lightsaber stuff can be.
Yeah.
From the video games and from the cut scenes of the video games, but they never really had them. And I think the prequels tried. The prequels had some good lightsaber fights, but like, I think like they were ultimately realized and perfect in these films.
Yeah.
They did such a good job with those.
Yeah, the way that they even designed the lightsabers, like Kylo's lightsaber being like really like on edge and everything. Like,
it's perfect.
It's like you look back at the other movies and you're like, does that really make sense in the visuals of the other movies? You're like, no, but I don't care because it just looks that much cooler. Like, I'm just willing to accept it.
Yeah.
No, I completely agreed. Like the lightsaber battles and everything. One thing I wanted to add that I don't think any of us mentioned, because I feel like anytime we got to the Palpatine stuff, we kind of like dove down to the not liking it. But the scene, like her battle like with Palpatine, I really, really liked hearing all the voices of the other Jedi and everything.
Ahsoka Tano was one of them.
Yeah.
But then is she dead? That's my concern.
Yeah. But it's there's definitely all that. but it was such a cool moment. Yes, does that whole sequence kind of feel like Disney was like, hey, everybody liked Endgame, let's do that again. Lando gets his on your left moment, and Rey literally says, I am all the Jedi, in the same pacing as Tony Stark says, I am Iron Man, before he snaps. But it's fine. Like, it kind of took me out of it because I laughed because the parallel was so obvious. But at the same time, I was like, you did that in such a cool way. I loved hearing all of the voices of the different Jedis. I love that Hayden Christian was in there.
Or did they use him too? Was it actually like a new recording from him, or
that I don't know.
It's probably all in the Wikipedia somewhere.
I'm looking forward to someone online like giving me all the details that I don't care to dive into. But I will thoroughly enjoy reading.
And ultimately, like, also at the end of the day, like, despite how I feel of like where they went with certain characters, I would love to see more of every single one of these characters. I still want to see more of Finn. I still want to see more of Rey. I would kill for a show, because it's like I am like obviously the worst person to ask. I haven't done my research on this, but like I haven't seen her in a whole bunch of other stuff. I feel like their lives have been so tied up with Star Wars.
She's in a Shakespeare film, Ophelia or something.
And then she was also a small part in that like train mystery remake, like Whodunit on the Train. It was like a
Murder on the Orient Express.
Yeah, she had like I think she had a small part in that. But like, I feel like, obviously Star Wars, I feel like has been back to back, because like once one ends, they're in pre-production for the next one, and she's probably training for it and stuff like that. So I wouldn't be surprised if like, they just haven't done other films because they've really had almost no time to do it, unless it encroaches on like the one free time that they have between the films. Yeah. And although I know it's kind of selfish, I would love to see more. Like, I would love to see Rey training new Jedi in a show. Like, I would love to see like a Poe and like Finn show, or like something with Lando, or like any of these things. They have all the possibilities. But there was plenty of good stuff. And I think from that, like what I say, the fact that I still want more from these characters ultimately tells me I didn't hate the film.
Yeah.
I didn't hate the new trilogy. I still want more of these characters. I just may not have like loved the conclusions but also Disney knows that they've got all this potential. Maybe they're going to reveal more about Poe and Finn and all these people later on in a show or in another movie. I suspect that they probably have them on contract for more films or things if they want them.
Yeah, I think it's probably similar to the Marvel contracts where they'll pop up in other things. And, Poe is actually one of the characters on Star Wars Resistance right now. And the character is voiced by Oscar Isaac. So there is other material.
I'm on Rebels right now. I haven't gotten
that. There are other things if you are willing to dive into the animated shows, the books. And again, you don't have to read those, at least what I've read and what I've seen. You don't have to read or watch those things to understand what's happening here. It's just this look at the universe as a whole and other areas, and that's what I like. But as far as what I liked about this movie, I don't have a ton to add after what you guys said, but I am here for the lightsaber battles, even though it seems like I'm the only one who has never played any of the Star Wars games. So I think I'm at a slight disadvantage there, not knowing what that experience is like. But I agree, the Finn, Rey, and Poe scenes, having the gang back together, that was fun. And it really made them feel like a team more so than they did in the other movies, because they were off doing their own things. And obviously, The Force Awakens, we have to get these characters together just to introduce them. And then that's really a lot of setup for what's to come. So to see them together in this, even though they kind of left Rose out of things, I was like, okay, well, those three, they're great together. Poe's love for BB-8, who does not have enough screen time in this, if you ask me, is just so fantastic. He cares so much about that little droid, and I love it. And Jonathan, I know you brought up Dio and Babu Frick, and, we didn't talk too terribly much about those characters, but they were fun little additions that in the grand scheme of things, maybe they don't end up having a larger role, which I don't really think we need another droid, but Dio is at least a cute little droid that, can pop up here and there, and Babu can fix things. So, he's useful.
Yeah. They could have him
How
pop
about
up.
Babu Frick?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind Babu in a video game somewhere. And by the way, like, you mentioned not having played the video games, and I don't know if you have any sort of video game system, but Jedi Fallen Order is a lot of fun. Is a lot of fun. It fills in some sort of story between, I think it's like after episode 3. Between episode 3 and episode 4, basically. So like after Order 66 or whatever the hell, like,
Yeah.
I just have a Switch, so if something comes out on there,
you won't
that
be
is
playing
worthwhile.
it on Switch, unfortunately.
Well, you can play Star Wars Jedi Outcast on the Switch. It's like $7, and that's actually a lot of fun.
I'll look
and when it
into
gets
that.
hard, there's cheat codes.
Yeah, and then Force Awakens. It's just like these games where you can use Force powers to like shove people off of ledges, or like. In the new one, it's funny. They have the kid from
Fallen Order?
Shameless. Fallen Order. They have the kid from Shameless who also plays is it Joker?
Oh, in
the,
Gotham. Yeah.
In Gotham, Cameron Monaghan, or he does all of the voiceover and voice and face capture stuff for the main character in the Star Wars game.
Right.
And it's a lot of fun. It's like, the games where you actually get to like wield a lightsaber and do all these and there's like all these different moves. It's not like just swinging a lightsaber around. There's all these different types of moves to do. And so for that type of stuff, it's a lot of fun. There's no time like the present, but I hope, there's also plenty of bad Star Wars games too that have come out recently.
Battlefront.
Battlefield.
I think it's front.
Yeah, Battlefront.
Yeah, like where it's like, once again, it shows you like it looks amazing and it sounds really good, but the gameplay's awful. So it's like they captured what Star Wars look and feel and like sound like, but like it was just not fun to play. So it's like there's a lot, and I think you had mentioned somewhere in here that where does Star Wars go from here? It's like these types of things.
Yeah, that's what I want to wrap this up with. Actually, is what do you guys want to see next? Maybe the next one or two things from Star Wars right now, because we have The Mandalorian, which just ended, and season 2 has already been announced, so let's not count that in the future of Star Wars talk here. But what's something that they haven't announced that you would like to see from them?
The Babu Frick adventures. I don't know what they are, but I'm here for them. But really, honestly, like the number one thing I've wanted forever, and this ended up being mentioned on an episode of Binge Mode, and I kind of got mad because they're way more successful, so now I don't sound like I had an original idea, and who knows, I may have stolen this idea from something else too, but I just always thought a Star Wars meets Cheers sitcom would be really sweet. Like, I want weird stuff like that. I want to take us... when it comes to the movies, it's just give us one-off great stories of different things throughout the universe, whether that's stuff with Jedi, whether it's stuff with more like bounty hunters or anything, like whatever, just one-off stories, but I also I want Star Wars to get weird. Like, I don't know, do stuff in a different genre that doesn't have to be a huge epic scale all the time. It still bums me out that there was that show that got dumped because of the Disney deal. What was it? Star Wars Detours that Seth Green worked on. You can watch a bunch of the stuff on YouTube, and it's really funny. And I thought that would have been a lot of fun. And sometimes I feel like Star Wars isn't allowed to just go in those really weird, quirky ways. So I'd like to see stuff like that. And then we were talking about games. Like I want more Star Wars games in a variety of styles and eras, whether it's single player based action, whether it's like a Telltale style or an adventure game like old school style. There was a really
can we play Sabacc yet?
Great game for the phone called Tiny Death Star, and I think it was based off Tiny Hotel. It was adorable. I want that on my phone again, but it got taken down. And my copy of Jedi Fallen Order actually arrived while we were recording this podcast, so that's exactly what I'm doing after we wrap up.
Perfect timing.
We're gonna have to chat, because if you have any questions, hit me up.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. But that's what I want from Star Wars. Just kind of let's take a break from the. I'm happy that the Skywalker saga is over. Let's take a break from the grand epic scale of that stuff and kind of just have some fun and get weird.
Let's play around in the universe sandbox that we've like established works. What about you, Mirjani? What do you want to see?
Well, one thing that I don't want is more Skywalker saga movies, because I feel like one, they're too contained, and two, a story that, like we said, like 3 different generations want one thing, so you can't service them all.
Right.
And like basically going off what Tim said, like I want Star Wars to get weird. I want a Star Wars maybe horror thing.
Yes.
Like if they could pull that off.
Yeah.
Like I want it to go in different territories. Even though I like The Mandalorian, I'm used to Star Wars being in a Western setting because that's what it was. Like that's what
Yeah, people forget that so often.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what George Lucas made it. He made it a space Western.
It's just
That's
more
what it is.
overt. It's just more overt in Gunslinger and Mandalorian, and that's why, we had characters like Han in Star Wars, whereas like Mandalorian is just all Han.
Yeah.
In a way, I guess. Like, I agree. Like, it would be, they should absolutely, I would love to see them go in a weird direction. And I hate to keep bringing back Marvel, but I only do it because it's under the same umbrella. So we know that creative firepower is there.
Well, Kevin Feige is doing a Star Wars movie.
Yeah,
so, you know what I mean? Like, so I think I want more K2SO.
Yeah.
I mean, apparently we're getting that with that
the
show.
Diego Luna show, yeah.
Diego Luna show.
Yeah.
I want, like, more games. Like, I want a damn Knights of the Old Republic, like, either update or something like that RPG, because that RPG is amazing. If you have, like, an Xbox or something like that, or you can still find it, I would play that game. More Fallen Order stuff. Better Battlefront stuff. Like 2 is like it's getting there.
Like, it looks amazing. Like, every time I see the trailer for all the new expansions, I'm like, oh, should I get the game again? No, because no one I know is talking about how good it is. It's like, it looks amazing though. Like, every time they have a movie come out, they're like, oh, here's all these levels and like playable characters from the game, but like, and like I said, it looks and sounds amazing. Like it does, but like, it just wasn't a compelling gameplay. It's like how we talk about how like Star Wars looks amazing, but the plot or like the pacing is weird. Then like it makes it ultimately unbalanced. And I feel like Star Wars, they're either really good games or they're really like, epic missteps. But I would personally, for me, I would like to see more movies, but I would like to see, I never want to hear about the Skywalkers ever again, unless it's about, a mention or something. It's not like a driving force behind a plot, unless like Rey Skywalker happens to be there. That's it. Like, I don't want anything else. They're playing it right now so safe because they only play within, like, I would absolutely love if they're like, here's what happens after this film ended. Like, for once, stop taking us backwards. Like Star Wars has relied so heavily.
Then they're not tied down to anything.
Yeah, now they're not tied down to anything. It would be really cool if they gave that type of stuff to Kevin Feige. Like, give Kevin Feige the story of where you take it next. Because he ultimately, like, we don't want to play in the same sandbox anymore. And, like, Kevin Feige had all of that original IP to work with at the beginning. But, like, we've shown that Marvel can go to weird places like space or be humorous like Thor Ragnarok. Like, we know, and we also know that Star Wars can exist this way. If you watch the finale of Mandalorian, it's directed by Taika Waititi, and it's amazing. Like, I don't want to give away too much, but it shows you what it could be. Like, it tiptoes up to it, but it could be like that type of stuff. And there's so much, but I just don't want everything to be anchored to Vader, everything anchored to like the First Order or, like, I don't mind. It would be cool if like stormtroopers and the Empire pop up here and there in little things. And like for the Mandalorian, it's like, obviously, like, I'm excited to see where the Mandalorian goes next, because doesn't it take place between Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens? It's like after the fall of the Empire, correct? Like,
I don't. Yeah, I was trying to think about that today. What I don't know. Whenever I watched the finale, I was trying to think about when it took place.
Because there's still remnants of the Empire there. And
Yeah.
It's like, okay. But like, now I want to see like what happens next. Like, give us, don't make us wait like another 15, 20 years for a movie or something. And just like, give us, now that you have the platform with Disney Plus, utilize it. I want the Obi-Wan Kenobi show to be good.
I'm so excited for more Ewan McGregor Obi-Wan.
Me too.
He's so good.
I think he's great. I know it's kind of like random, but like I love everything he does. Even though like I wasn't ultimately like a huge fan of the movie altogether, I really liked the Shining sequel that he did. Was it Dr. Sleep? I loved
I loved
him in Fargo.
Director's cut coming out.
Oh, nice. That's cool. I just like Ewan McGregor, so I'm excited for that. And I know he's been like sitting on it for a while, and they were going to make it a movie at one point, and then it just became, now it's a TV show. So I'm excited for that. I mean, even though despite it goes against everything I just said I was excited for them not to like tie any more original, characters.
I think it's within reason. Within reason,
because that's exciting. But like I want to see just new things. Like it shows, like, once again, I think like besides taking away the fact the narrative of like Fallen Order, the video game, like lives within, after Order 66 or whatever the hell it was called. Like, it was interesting because it's like these new characters. Not everything has to be. It shows that existing stories and IP exist within Star Wars. It's just like they need to be taking risks and not like firing their directors 70% through the movie because they hear it's not Star Wars enough. Like, take some
the galaxy
sort of
is a big place. It can be it can be different.
And I think also like with once again trying not to go back to Mandalorian so much, but like there's an episode this season, like most of it's pretty good, but there's an episode I hated, and it's the one with the woman from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and like he's taking on like to go he's trying to collect a bounty, but it's on Tatooine and they're at the Mos Eisley bar. And that was like what I'm saying, like, is the stuff I hate from Star Wars, when they like are like, hey, we're at Mos Eisley and like we're sitting in like the same, little cubicle that like Han shot Greedo in, like I just don't want everything to be constantly bashing me over the head with like classic places, like let's just do some new stuff.
Well,
like,
that was the whole thing that like George Lucas, he's always talked about with Star Wars, that for him, it was always about pushing the galaxy further, even for
and they've regressed.
Yeah. To give us new planets, new worlds, new creatures, everything. It's like, so it's regardless of what anyone thinks of what he did throughout his time frame of being in charge, we can all agree, like, he always gave us something new to marvel at, to be like, oh wow, like I've never seen like that before, like that's cool, so that's what I think we all seem to be agreeing. We just, whether it's whatever era it takes place in, just give us something fresh and new and different and fun, and so, and
have those other characters support this new stuff, not revolve around them.
Yeah,
like I said, I'm happy to see. I would love to see a young Jedi Knight, Disney Plus show, if that's what she's going to do. It would have been nice if they had really driven home on like her recruiting Jedi. I don't even know if it even seemed to imply if she's guarding something or if she's like starting something. But I would love that. She's going to be a farmer. Yeah, she's going to be a moisture farmer. No big, just living there. But yeah, I think it does sound like we're kind of like just something new. Like, you've shown us what it can be, and you've kind of like come so close, and there's enough right about even the weaker films and the weaker stuff that you guys have done, but like I don't know if they've quite had a home run yet. I feel like the last home run they had was Force Awakens, and even that was like so much repeated stuff. And then I felt like Rogue One was really good too, but I know people that just didn't like it. It seems like I think that's another theme that I keep coming and realizing, is that it means
not everybody's going to be happy.
Not everyone's going to be happy, and we are literally like, it's so crazy because I remember my mom like camping out because I was in school, and my mom had to camp out to get Phantom Menace tickets, and I might feel very differently about these films. I thought the Phantom Menace and all these prequels were a lot of fun when I was a kid, and then, really only came to dislike them when I watched them as an adult. So who knows how I'll feel even when I'm older, and now how some of the people that feel about it now will feel, but it's just hard to say right now. But I mean, at least like, I think another thing is, hey, we're getting more Star Wars, and we're going to keep getting more Star Wars. And, maybe I'll look back and someday say, I really wish we hadn't gotten more Star Wars. I've had enough Star Wars, but right now, I'm okay with it. I'm all right.
I would love to see them take some of the characters from the animated shows, the comics, and put them into live action shows or movies. I would totally watch a movie or a show based on Dr. Aphra. And I know she ends up working with Vader, so maybe you can do it pre-Vader timeline so you aren't then kind of going back into the past and being like, oh yeah, here's another show with Vader and doing that whole thing again.
But it's showing us a Vader that we never really get to see. Like the Vader in the comics, like the closest we get to that Vader is...
Is she a comic character?
Yeah.
A TV
it's
show? Okay.
really cool. Highly recommend.
I just don't trust them to not tie it in somehow if they do bring Vader back at this point, given how much of
She is
this
Vader's
new
niece.
trilogy was rooted in the past still. It wasn't really rooted with these new characters. It was like, okay, we have to say goodbye to all of these characters from 40 years ago because of reasons. And it really just felt like at times that kind of held this trilogy down. So I want them to sort of just cut those ties and be like, here are other characters. And, you know, if you've watched the Clone Wars, you know that Ahsoka has ties to Anakin and then Vader. And there's a whole story about Ahsoka in the book by E.K. Johnston that has nothing to do with Anakin or Vader. And I would love a movie sort of set in that time period with Ahsoka, or even just like something on Disney Plus. It doesn't need to be a movie necessarily. And then on the animated front, and Tim, have you gone through Rebels before, or is this your first time?
This is my first time. I've seen all of Clone Wars, and I always wanted to watch Rebels, but it was always hard to I wasn't caught up, and it was just really hard to get the episodes. They were never streaming anywhere.
Yeah.
So now that it's all on Disney Plus, I've been working through. I'm only like 6 episodes in.
Okay.
But I'm honestly having a really fun time with it. I really like the characters so far. I like what they're doing with that. I do know there are certain I just because, internet, I am spoiled on, certain characters that come up later, but I'm excited to encounter them.
Okay, well, in an effort to not spoil it any further for you, that is why I asked if you had seen it. I do want a continuation of Rebels, given the ending that we received. And I won't say which characters I want involved, but anyone who has seen Rebels probably knows where I want that to go. And,
who knows? We're getting the final season of Clone Wars, so...
Yeah. I would also love that.
I think there's a lot more opportunity now that they have finished this trilogy. They can maybe let loose a little more and have your Guardians of the Galaxy or Thor Ragnaroks of the Star Wars universe pop up now.
Yeah, like new weird, and I absolutely agree. I would love to see anyone from those animated shows, even though I don't watch the animated shows regularly. I know how much of like a strong fan base they have, that I feel like a TV show would be just like an instant home run. Like the fury over like who would they cast in these roles, because, especially since you have like Freddie Prinze Jr. doing like the voice of one of the Rebels characters, right? And like all this stuff. It's like, it'll be really cool to see.
I think I heard he cameoed in Rise of Skywalker. I need to watch for him.
I wonder who the stormtroopers are. Because I remember hearing that it was like there was some really big
Kevin
cameos
Smith
in
popped up in this on Kijimi.
Yeah.
He just revealed his little cameo. He was just some guy huddled up next to a droid when they were walking by. But yeah, there's probably a lot of cameos we don't know about, but there are so many opportunities for them now.
Yeah. I also, do they even have any films slated right now? Like I don't
think so.
They don't have any Star Wars films slated.
So I think the only thing we know is that I think whatever project that the Game of Thrones guys were on, they're off of it, but I don't think the project itself is dead. And then the Ryan Johnson
Ryan Johnson movies
are they still happening?
Apparently, any of those, they're like nothing's like dead in the water. But like Ryan Johnson's been working with Knives Out, which is fantastic. Everybody should go see it.
Yeah.
But I guess he's been really busy with that, and he's like, I honestly haven't really talked to them, but it doesn't sound like it's necessarily dead. I wonder if just kind of everything's
I wonder if they've cooled off on him, I wonder if because of like the reaction that he got, maybe people are cooling off on Ryan Johnson. Even though, and you're right, Knives Out's fantastic. He does great movies.
I think a lot of people are like you see like the thank you Ryan Johnson hashtag going around. Like, so I think a lot of people are fonder of him now. And now, also they have something slated for 2021, like an untitled Star Wars thing for 2021.
Oh,
I don't know what that is.
Interesting. We shall see.
I hope it's not just like another like Solo or something. Like, I don't need like, it was cool to see young Leia in a flashback, but I don't need an entire like CGI Leia movie or like.
Oh, God, no.
I don't think they'll be dumb enough to do a whole CGI Leia movie. I would hope not anyway.
No.
I think they just need to take a step back and kind of reevaluate based on this trilogy ending and kind of be like, okay, maybe we go in this direction here and this direction there. But I think, there are going to be many more Star Wars conversations to come. So I want to thank all three of you for coming on to talk about The Rise of Skywalker at length here. And Tim and Jonathan, I know you will be back on soon for The Mandalorian. So like I said, more Star Wars to come. It's not going anywhere.
So much Star Wars.
We do need Star Wars cheers, though, like Mos Eisley cheers. You were saying.
Right? Like,
let's make some up, guys.
It would be amazing.
And everyone, like, there's the, like canned applause when Boba Fett comes in
like,
to do a cameo.
Yeah.
A little, just like variety hour. Like maybe you have Jabba the Hutt hosting, like, he's like Letterman. He's like,
you can do something
guests.
really funny with Woody Harrelson, before his character dies.
Yeah,
and you can have him come in and do a little meta thing with the fact that he was on Cheers.
Yeah.
Great.
And Mirjani, I know our Star Wars conversations are not over. There are still plenty of the movies that I haven't discussed. I've really only been diving into the recent movies here, so I'll certainly have you back on as well.
I'll be back. I'm pretty sure.
Definitely will. Quickly, before we go, I want to let you all know that you can support the podcast on Patreon. You can follow us at Geekdom Pod on Twitter and at Welcome to Geekdom on Instagram and Facebook. And as always, thank you all for listening, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your day.